Okay.
Which is, were you as disappointed as I was that you didn't have to do a right analog stick down, quarter circle up to wipe Lance Hendrickson's ass?
Yes! Actually, yes. I was
In-
like, that would be I actually did it. I physically did that and went, how is that not a prompt?
Well,
you do
in
everything else
in
for
a
the
game where you have to take the bins out for, what was it, like 20 minutes? And
Yeah.
don't step in front of the television. Heaven forbid. Why am I not allowed to wipe Bishop's ass? I mean, we took
Yeah.
him to the toilet.
Well, again, and we were building a relationship with him. It would have brought
Nothing
us very
builds a
close
relationship quicker
together.
than the circle ring motion around an old man's ring.
If done incorrectly, it can also bring it down incredibly quickly.
Well, that's a trophy you don't want to get. The fail to wipe.
The brown finger trophy.
Yeah, I feel like the game really did a misstep with not including that.
I mean, you can probably see why. Because I find, especially with these kind of games, you can, to a certain degree, dick around with the animation when you sort of kind of half complete it and then pull it back and don't complete it. You can make them kind of... So you could have just been like wiping his ass for like half an hour, really.
That's why I bought it.
Yeah, because there's one scene, I think it's in...
Is it the heavy rain scene you're thinking of? Where
It's no, there are some very good ones in that.
I was thinking of there's one specifically where if you're doing the chase through the supermarket and don't do any of the interaction, he just falls over every single thing.
No, that's hilarious. No,
it's not,
it's
especially
not
when the
even that
chickens
good.
get involved.
It's the Between Two Souls. It's such a small thing. It's literally you have to uncork a wine bottle.
Okay.
And failing that to me was just hilarious because it would be kind of like they'd both sort of he'd lean in with the glass and you'd be like, oh, and then you'd fuck it and he'd just go, oh, and sit back.
What kind of motion do you have to do to uncork a wine bottle?
I can't remember. I think you had to twist in a clockwise motion one of the analog sticks, repeatedly, and then pull down on the right stick. But what I would do was just sort of put it in and she'd sort of flail about and just put it back down and go, "Ah." So we were trying to have a drink for at least half an hour, me and this guy. But that just creased me for no reason. Again, it's not even one of the funnier ones like the falling over in the supermarket. For me, in this game, it was the freeway sequence when you have to chase...
across the
Cara and Alice across the
highway.
freeway. If they get to that, it's a circumstantial situation, but yeah, Connor has to chase them across the freeway. And for one of the achievements, you have to kill Connor at pretty much every
point,
every thing. And for me, that was always hilarious
What
because
did
he
you
just stands there like a fucking deer in the headlights and just gets hit by a truck. But you can also do it to the point where if you mess up certain ones as Cara, like she'll go to run over the motorway barricade, but she just flubs it and just like lands on her arse on the other side and
just
stuff
sits
like that,
there.
so. Yeah, and then it gets up slowly and then
That's the
keeps
thing.
running.
The game relies so heavily on you at least trying to do something. If you
When
turn
you
away
don't,
for a
it's just
second, the character's
hilarious.
like, well, I'm just going to sit here like a lost toy.
Yeah.
Which is that the point? Is that half the point that they are kind of all, at the heart toys? Kind of robots that aren't going to react properly? I don't think so.
Well, I don't know, yeah. Because essentially you could say, in a general way, you could play the game with letting the AI have free will, because if you never make a decision, other than, let's say, quick time events where they've got to survive, they will automatically pick the first option anyway. So, effectively, you can have no input in terms of any of the character decisive moments. It was always pick the default first option.
Yeah.
And then just do the cuts, the animations for running around and stuff.
I really thought there was going to be a point in the game where the character would turn around and chastise me as the player for controlling them, and I thought that would have been a clever twist.
You did finish it, right?
Yeah, I finished one playthrough. I couldn't do the platinum like you did, but
Well,
there are certain points where you can see them. They break through the controls that you see on screen.
yes,
But I did think at one point they were going to be like, "Hey, fuck you, player."
well, they do have a slight nod to that at some point. I don't know if you get it straight away,
Okay.
but after finishing the game, certainly for me, as soon as I return to the main menu, the AI that you have at the main menu, the woman,
Who is what's his face is maid, isn't she? She works with the guy who originally created all the robots. You meet her in the game, don't you? She answers the door when you and Connor and the policeman go there.
Yes, because you have the option to shoot her or not as well. At one
That's
point
right.
in the game, you can either kill her or not. But whatever her name is, I forget. She is your main menu.
Tiffany.
It's
For argument's sake,
that.
yeah.
It's something like that. But she's at the main menu and she's your guide down. She says, "Oh, opening the thingy extras menu." But when you complete the game, she'll say, depending on how you do it, I guess maybe. Certainly on my first playthrough, I did, the goody 2 shoes. I did a peaceful protest. Everything was good at the end of mine. Everyone was alive. She basically said, "I would like to leave. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So she walks off, and that's not It's not an achievement, and it's not tied to anything. But if you let her go, she just goes, and that's
She just
it.
goes.
She just buggers off.
I know she was a bit of a fourth wall breaker, and like as the game went on, she looked more concerned and like questioning her own mortality kind of thing. I quite liked that because it kind of reminded you where you were in the narrative slightly.
Well, yeah, because I'm sure at one point I quit out to the menu, went back in, and before I could load in, she popped up and said, "Are you sure you want to keep going? Because once you do something, it's done. Like, things are okay now. Why do you want to mess with them? Do you do you really want to play?" And when you say yes, she looks really like down and stuff.
Yeah, just looks down, looks a bit confused.
But yeah, I mean, when you return after your first game, at some point, if you're back on the menu, she will ask for her freedom, and you can choose to say yes or no. I don't know what happens if you say no, but they did put a thing in by demand. People were like, originally there was no option to get her back ever. If you said yes, she was literally gone forever on any new game. Maybe a new game she appeared again, but if you were going back and doing chapter select,
she was just gone completely.
She was just gone. But they did put an option in at some point when I was playing through chapters. It popped up and said, "Do you want a new version? Free of charge." And then when she comes back, she's a completely reset thing.
She should be like she should come back with like a skinhead and combat gear, like she's been out on a mission.
Yeah,
she's her own person now. She's reformed.
Yeah. She should come back and tell you what's been going on and be like, "Oh, whatever."
I assume you got the quiz that popped up halfway through, which was like, "Would you like to do 10 questions?"
Yeah. I think that happened twice, actually. Let me sort of review it or something.
Yeah, to be honest, I can't remember any of the questions, but I thought that was quite a nice little include, especially when it told you all the global answers. You're like, this is what everyone's chosen. It's like,
it is quite nice when you see those things, actually. Especially when you do something that you don't realise that no one's done, really. You're like, oh, why didn't everybody else choose to do that, I wonder? It's kind of weird.
I noticed that some of the questions I purposely answered in a way that I wouldn't, and that was the majority of the answers that on the global scale. And I kind of noticed that was the way that the game approached a lot of its questions, because the whole game is about moral choices. Yeah. And I always found that whatever moral choice it presented you with, the one that seemed like the less viable option was always the one that gave the better outcome. And once you kind of get that pattern going, you kind of know, okay, I'm gonna do the thing that seems a bit harsh to the little girl, whatever her name was, but really that always gives you the best outcome. And every character's gonna be more trusting if you do the thing that seems counterintuitive.
Well, not necessarily.
Majoritively, I found. It was like, we won't sleep in the car. We will sleep in the car, but that's going to be to her detriment because she wants to go sleep in a nice bed or whatever. But she'll like you more for it, that kind of thing.
Well,
that's maybe a bad example.
Well, yeah, technically, because realistically, there's not much you can do to piss that kid off. You can do things that will definitely bring her opinion down, but ultimately, if you get to the end and you survive and stuff, she's gonna love you regardless, But no, there are things like that where, like you say, it can be rewarded if you choose to sleep in the car the night that they're on the run.
Mm-hmm.
You actually get a better chance at escaping because no one's looking for you. If you choose to sleep in the hotel, the guy on the reception dobs you in. If you sleep in the squat, they come in and search for you, and there's a bit where, depending on how you're playing as Connor, you can kind of arrest the guy and just leave, or if you know where they are, which is literally under the stairs behind a box,
they're around the corner.
You can walk straight up to them and just dob them in, and then la la la. So then that turns into a chase. So basically, if you stay at the hotel or the come on, I just said it once.
The squat.
The squat, thank you. If you stay at the squat or the hotel, there is a chase with Connor. But if you stay at the car, there's a chance that you nullify that completely. You just walk off past the cops and don't get
I will
noticed.
tell you, that's not how my playthrough went, because
yeah.
I think I did it in a way that the game wasn't directed for. So when it came to that, I stole from the guy in the shop. And then I changed my mind halfway through. I was like, no, we're not going to go to the motel. We're going to sleep in the car. But obviously, because I was caught in the security camera, Connor turned up. And then we had a chance to try and get away. But I walked straight into a policeman. He was like, oh. I was like, oh, shit. So then the chase ensued. So, I don't know. Yeah, it seemed like a bit disjointed in some parts. Things like that.
Well, the thing is, though, that is quite good.
Well, it is, because, yeah, it kind of... Oh, Christ.
Oh, hello. But yeah, like I like, because that's an outcome I never got. When I did go into the shop and steal the money and I went to the hotel, because I did the whole thing of I went into the laundromat, got the clothes.
I stole the clothes.
Yeah,
off the guy.
The good thing is, a second or like third or fourth time I did that. I cocked up that quick time, so he noticed me and just gave me the most awkward look, and we were like, okay, I guess we'll just back out into the rain then. Let's go sleep in the car. That was an awkward playthrough. But I think there's other things you can do, like you can do something where you're in the shop, but you don't actually steal the money, so obviously you still turn up on the CCTV, but you haven't done anything wrong, if that makes sense. So the guy doesn't dob you in.
Yeah,
I could be making that up, but
I think there might be a way to reason with him, and then the way I did it was I distracted him by knocking down cans. With what is the small girl's name? Because Kara is
Alice.
Alice.
Yeah, so Kara's the woman you play as, and
yeah.
Alice is the child.
Yeah. So there was an option to, because you get a gun at some point, I think, and you can hold him up and steal the money, but I distracted him. But obviously the camera got me. But then
as soon as you walk out, he looks at the till and goes, "Oh man."
Yeah. But then he gives you that weird kind of, again, fourth wall breaking. It's your decision, because when you play as Connor, you get the choice to actually look through all those files. And I don't know whether there's an option to ignore the fact that case has come through, that there's been a robbery at that store, because that's like your next lead, isn't it? Because you literally have to say to the guy, "Oh, there's been a robbery. It looks like I'm gonna say replicant, because fuck it, Blade Runner. We should go there and investigate."
Well, that's the thing. I never found that dialogue, because obviously I had conflicting playthroughs. But every time I didn't actually see that as an option ever. So my decision, or however it came across, was that he always kind of, even when I was trying to be nice, sort of gets angry at you, roughs you up, and then a copper comes in and says, "Oh, this unit's been spotted here, blah blah blah." So I've always seen a dialogue tree that I've never opened, because I don't know what it is or how to get to it. So that must be, if you go in, steal the money, and then that gets called in, you must then see that there must be an option on the terminal to tell Hank about it. Whereas there wasn't for me on any playthrough I did.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was, like I said, I only did one playthrough, and that was, it is Hank, isn't it? That's his name. Yeah, it's at the point where you're trying to make friends.
That was easy for me, because
his dog's name is Sumo.
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 But you know that bit where you have to go into his house and break in through the window?
Oh god, that really pissed me off, because
it's that little fall. It's that how I tried multiple times on that. I was like, can you nail that jump? It's the fact that he sort of just cocks up that jump into the house, and it makes me laugh.
Through the window?
Yeah. Because he kind of clips his feet and lands on his arm. He's like...
Did it not annoy you, though, that as soon as you turn up at the house and he doesn't answer the door, you're like, he's going to be drunk asleep somewhere?
Well...
It's so bloody obvious.
I mean, it's obvious, but it's still... That's my favourite scene in the game, because of the way that he is when he's drunk. And when you pick him up, he's like, leave me alone. And then he's like, attack, Sumo. Good dog. Attack. And then you put him on the wall, and he's like, "Oh, fuck off!"
Didn't you find it really unrealistic how quickly he sobered up from having a bit of a cold shower? Like that would not. If that worked, I would go to work a lot more.
I don't know. I picked a rather jaunty shirt for him to wear, so I think that.
Oh yeah, Hawaiian all the way.
Hawaiian. I went for stripy. I quite like that one. I did second playthrough. I went for hippie because
hippie was what I went with.
Because I was trying not to piss him off. I thought there might have been dialogue. I thought if you pick the hippie one, he might be like, "Come on, what is this?" But I was like, at the end of the day, they're all his shirts.
Yeah, he is a hippie.
He owns them. Yeah. But yeah, no, I really quite like that scene because of, depending on your playthrough, like obviously if you're trying to be friendly to him, the option there to taunt him about the case is there, and he's like, "All right, I'll just go. I suppose you wouldn't be interested in a murder at a strip joint." And he's like, "Oh, maybe I should check it out."
I got a few minutes.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you just like fine and walk out, he's like, "All right, where is it then?" Then you tell him. But I just like because yeah, obviously first playthrough, good playthrough, best outcomes. Trying to be nice to Hank. There were some really good moments with those two that were actually really quite funny and stuff.
They were out of the whole game, they were my highlight, I think. I did like their buddy cop, well, sort of anti-buddy cop relationship, I think, made the game. If it was just the other two characters, we haven't even mentioned Marcus. Marcus, no. I actually...
Worst character.
He was so stereotypically rubbish and cliched that it just made me angry. A lot of the time playing as him was like, I can't wait for this to be over.
Well, the good thing is, obviously, spoilers out the arse on all of this. You can kill him.
Oh god,
and
yeah.
Just get it out the way, and you play as whatever the lady is.
His lady friend.
His lady friend. Yeah, because obviously that's another story tree. You can get into a relationship with her if you like.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's what I did do, and even that made me annoyed. But it seems that like there's 3 different writing styles going on. This is going to sound really pretentious, but I quite like the Connor and Hank story because that seems like it's actually. There's my phone. Actually, seems like someone's taken the time to write a kind of a relationship, but the rest of it, just a lot of it seems like, what have I seen in the movie, and what can I rehash? I mean, to get to the endings, they're the completely different thing. The whole bloody Schindler's List themed, concentration camp ending.
Yeah.
But so many scenes in this game you've seen in every film ever. But I still liked their dialogue because I liked Connor as a character. But Marcus, he just seemed like he wasn't very well characterized, but everything that he did just seemed to be there to invoke some sort of movie trope. Like there's the whole, he becomes like this weird messianic Jesus figure, and I was like, oh, this is just so rubbish. Like,
yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's the whole, like, vanilla kind of attributes that this guy has, because he's kind of like, poster boy gorgeous kind of, and then he comes from this, as a character, comes from this kind of, the best background one could hope for in terms of being an AI. Like, he cares for a really nice painter in an amazing place, and the guy treats him really well. Whereas, let's say, Kara's character has literally been torn apart God knows how many times before we even meet her in the story.
Well, yeah, it's not even that where he comes from. It's that his story is so on the nose is what the game is trying to get across. Like his first scene is you got to go and stand at the back of the bus like Rosa Parks. It's like, come on, be more subtle. The fact that you've made him a black character. Forget about it. The robots are meant to be what's the prejudice here, but you've made him like an African American as well, so it's double whammy of.
Of course, like, and they hammer that home with, I believe, is it Rose, the character that you meet trying to get to the border? I mean, I don't know what you did on your playthrough.
So my ending was spoilers. Kara got killed because she got shot with a spotlight. But
she got shot with a spotlight.
No, you get seen by the spotlight, don't you? And then she gets shot. But
so
then,
where? Let's go for this quickly. Just give me your rundown. Tell me your playthrough. Tell me what happened.
Okay, so were we talking last chapter? Let's go last chapter.
Just go broad strokes. What happened with your characters? What happened?
Well, Marcus, of course, doesn't matter what you play as. He becomes a revolutionary. He becomes the Jesus figure. He basically, his Jesus power is that he gets Wi-Fi, so he can point at people and convert them. That's his power. He gets fucking 5G.
Yeah.
I got right to the end with him, and then my playthrough with him was that he died because I got sick of his rants. So when it comes down to the last standoff, I just let him get shot. I think all of them guys died. Connor, I saved him at every event, and I saved Hank, so I got the good ending for them. They became buddy pals. So there's a point where you got to fight yourself as Connor. And yeah, I think I got his best ending. With Kara, we ended up in the concentration camp because there's a bit where you've got to save. Oh, what's the other robot guy's name that you find? He's a big guy.
I want to say Luther?
It is Luther, yes, because of Idris Elba. So there's a bit where I'm not sure what I did to make it happen, but Luther is captured by people.
Just police.
Yeah, and you can sneak up and hit a guy with a brick, and I messed that up, so we all got captured and sent to a concentration camp. I mean, the amount of times I saved Luther. So we all end up stripped off, and we're all just robots. And then we end up in the concentration camp, and then there's a bit where you've got to walk around to try and find Kara, but the spotlight's coming in, and if you move when it's on you, you get sniper shot, and I think you've got 3 minutes left to kind of resolve the issue. And you find Happy Guy Eddie, whatever his name is, from the casino, not the casino,
Johnny, isn't it? Or
something like that, from the fairground where you first met them. And you can kind of befriend him again, and you can signal someone from the back of the concentration camp queue. And
Jerry,
Jerry, that's him. And but you can cause a distraction, and I got Luther and Kara out of there, and then they just wake up on my own. They're like I think they're in the desert or like a pit of dead people, and they're like, where do we go from here? And that's their ending. So, yeah, Kara died.
So what you? Oh, wow.
Alice and Luther survived. I think no, Connor dies as well. I think in mine. Yeah. Didn't do too well. I think I was just in the rush to get to the end. I was like, you know what? I don't want the happy-go-lucky ending. I want to see how this all ties up.
Yeah, I mean, technically, apart from Connor and spoilers, Hank not dying, you almost got the worst ending.
Good, because that's always the most. That's the most interesting. I remember completing Heavy Rain with the best ending, and that was just cringeworthy. Like, hey, we're a whole happy family. It's like,
yeah. Well, I think I got the best one on that because I never twigged that it was the copper. So when it dropped at the ending, it was a good ending, if that makes sense.
What wasn't the copper?
So again, spoilers in Heavy Rain.
Oh, you're talking about Heavy Rain now? Yes. Oh, yeah.
So I didn't figure it out because you can figure it out, and I didn't. So certain characters got offed, I think.
Yes.
As a consequence of that, and I was like, oh shit.
There's a bit where you're driving the wrong way down the motorway.
That bit's again hilarious to mess up the QT.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. But yeah, I guess my initial playthrough was completely different to yours then because I got every character alive at the end of it. I mean, technically, as far as you can.
Yeah, I think kind of survived. I can't remember now, to be honest. Because he goes into... Oh, does he become... he may become the leader of the resistance. I can't remember. Anyway, I remember it wasn't...
No, it'll become... Oh, North. North is the woman. In the resistance. North. Because what is it? It's North, Simon, Josh.
I had a huge problem with Simon. Because I think I did the game in such a weird way, because that's just the way I am, that I wasn't consistent. And Simon's story arc just didn't align for me. And I think that's a problem.
He didn't really have a story arc. He was just, again, a supporting character.
So there's the bit where you get to the radio station.
Yeah.
And my playthrough, I left him on the roof. I went to shoot him and didn't. Give him the gun to finish himself off. We all jumped off the roof. And then that was it for Simon. Then there's a bit where you go as Connor, and I think the game wants you to go up and find him.
Yeah.
And I just didn't. I just left him there. But then after that, he just turns up again later on. And it's like...
Yeah, because he survived. So again, this is the bit that you missed. There was like or you said you saw it and didn't really know what it meant, but you see a second of when you all leave because Connor's been... I'm assuming you got attacked by one of the three...
That's right. Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
after that you all leave, obviously, because there's been a commotion. So he can then just bugger off somehow.
Right, okay.
Because the options are, obviously, you can shoot him in the head. And then at that point, I think if you were Connor, you could go and investigate him.
Yeah.
Or if you go straight to the roof and bypass the kitchen, you can find him in a storage. He's in like one of the air vents or whatever, and he'll rush you with a gun, and you can basically tap into him.
What didn't make sense for me is that the whole point that he's on the roof, he's been shot, he can't walk. So he can't be carried by the gang. So how did he get better
I don't
again?
know how he got out of there. That is a massive plot hole. But again, you can bypass that if basically, when the guy runs for the buzzer, you can shoot or not shoot. If you shoot,
okay.
Simon doesn't get shot at all, and he jumps off the building with you.
Got you. Yeah, it just
Again,
it seemed like there was a few things, I haven't written them all down, but there was a few things that I feel like on my very specific disjointed playthrough that didn't quite add up narrative wise. And I know why they do it. It's so you can go through and play through again and go, oh, okay, now I've filled in all the gaps. But for me, it was like, how is he back?
And I think it's one of those things as well, like, because the story that makes the most sense, like, even if you got sent to the concentration camp, is that if you get all your characters to survive, they go on to, everything sort of ties up a bit better. Because ultimately, your goal, realistically, when playing the game, should be to make all characters survive to the end.
Yeah, but I always find with these kind of games, the most interesting thing to do is the counterintuitive option. I like the idea of just killing everyone off and just seeing what the game does with it.
But again, then yes, that is basically the extremist. If you go full on good guy, full on bad guy, both of those storylines make perfect sense. But if you do what you did and kind of mix and match those things, some parts of the games don't make sense. So because you let all the other characters die, but Connor and Hank survived and had a good one, it's kind of a disjointed ending. Because what you're meant to have is that Hank hates Connor by the end of it.
I think Hank was my favourite character.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, tell a lie, Sumo. Come on.
No, yeah, he's all right. He's just a Beethoven.
Yeah, he's Beethoven, yeah. Big old slobbery bud.
I quite like the contrast of that, because obviously I play a lot of gaming, a lot of games to a completionist level. I love me platinum trophies. I do.
Well, this is where we differ, see, because from one playthrough, I was left feeling like I was obliged to do it again, but I really didn't want to.
I couldn't wait.
I know, but I wanted to be given everything that I missed rather than have to do it. Because you don't know how many times it's going to take you to get those story elements in there.
I mean, there should be some kind of option to bypass it in terms of, an extra, where you can just see what would happen, just like a film or whatever. Here's what you could, like,
here's the alternative
bully
ending.
Special prize. Here's what you could have won.
Well, of course you could probably just watch the different outcomes on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
And really, you could probably play the whole game on YouTube if you wanted to, because
but I mean, the fact is, it
not
offers the chapter select. So in realistic terms, you can just restart that mission. So you can restart and go, all right, this time I'm going to try not to die, and then see where the game takes me, because then you can keep playing through from that vantage point. So it's not exactly like you have to do a complete playthrough to see all the elements. Because for me, I've completed it, but I've still never done what I saw in a trailer, which is obviously the first night where you're with Alice and your Kara. If you don't break your programming, if you don't go and interfere, he will fuck her up and he'll come down and kill you. And it's like, it seems like a really harrowing start to a game.
Yeah.
So I didn't go for that, funnily enough. I did what it told me to do and broke free.
You put everything
I still
in the bin.
I still want to go back and see that, to just be like, oh shit, they actually did this in a game. Because they didn't shy away from that kind of stuff. They didn't shy away from the issues of like abuse and child abuse and spousal abuse or whatever you want to call it. It was very those were the good parts. Weirdly, for me, I wish I'd have gone to the concentration camp on the first playthrough. I know it sounds horrible to say that, but that's
a weird sentence, isn't it? I wish I'd gone to the concentration camp.
Fucking really,
Mom.
I want to go to Auschwitz next year.
Where's my striped pajamas?
No, but in terms of strengthening the story, really, I mean, it is a little bit on the nose, but Christ, it's effective.
It is.
It is a terrifying part. It's better than the bit where Marcus is in the skip or whatever at the start.
Oh yeah, I mean,
which is a bit. It's sort of tutorial based, or it's a bit hackneyed, but it's.
Well, that bit
kind of makes a point.
See, my problem with a lot of it is that all of the scenes that are really affecting, like the concentration camp, where you're basically discarded as a dismantled robot. Any of those scenes, they're all taken from really standout parts of cinema that's already been established. But
no. But there's nothing especially original.
There's nothing original.
I'll give you that.
But because it's taken from things that are really well done, it still kind of works because it has to. I don't know if there was anything in there that was original to the game. Like the thing where Marcus is in the pit of dismantled parts just reminded me of AI and RoboCop.
Yeah, a little bit of Wall-E as well.
Bit of Wall-E. There is what is it where he's? There is a film where he's taking his arm off and trying to put different things on. I'm blanking on it, but
Evil Dead.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Why not? Obviously, yeah, like we mentioned, the concentration camp Schindler's List, but just all the kind of the buddy cop. You turn up at the door. He's a drunk, so he's going to be passed out on the floor. He's going to be angry. He's going to be trying to kill himself.
The game was packed full of tropes. There's no arguing that. But I think beneath it all, even though it was a little bit cliched in quite a lot of areas, it still managed to put that central core story of whether it's AI or whether it's racism or whether it's anything, oppression and prejudice in any nature is a dangerous thing and is a horrible thing.
But then again, that's I think that's my main problem with it is that, and I enjoyed the game. It's the thing, like you can enjoy something, but you don't have to like it. Like you can be entertained by it. But I don't feel like it had a proper story. I feel like it was making points.
Yes,
If someone you would explain the story, it's about a robot uprising. But what happens? Well, nothing. There's no real resolution depending on your playthrough. So I don't know. It's a.
I mean, the thing is, the only salvageable explanation for that would be if they were actually planning on doing a sequel to it. In which case, it would stand as a good. Right? It's set up these characters, but they kind of can't do that.
Well, you've had multiple endings, so how are you gonna?
Yeah. So you can't guarantee that they should be alive. So it's kind of. You can't continue that on unless they continue on the theme of Detroit. So let's say it's not those same characters, but it is the same thing. It is still AI trying to get legitimized and have rights. But again, it's one of those. Yes, it was a game based around a central point, and then they had to justify the point by putting in QTEs. But I still think that it is one of my favourite games to date, to be fair, because I think some of it made that very salvageable in terms of the relationship between Hank and Connor. It's very cliched, but it reminds me of things like Heavy Rain. No, blooming hell, Black Rain.
Black Rain, yeah.
Yeah.
And more so Lethal Weapon, I found.
Yeah. It has that dynamic, but it was really that's what the game should really be. Mm-hmm. It should have just been those two.
Yeah, I mean,
it should have been you going around with your Batman vision, analysing clues and sending him off to Alfred, and then having a laugh with him in the pub.
I mean, it chose very safe character sets. Like, you've got it is the mismatched cop setting. It's the Ripley and Newt from Alien trying to escape kind of characters of Cara and Alice, and you've got Marcus and North, which is I don't know that will relate to, but I suppose they're always going to work because they are always not relatable, but they're really enjoyable thing to watch. I really enjoyed it as a kind of slow paced film. I think it's not. You wouldn't really class it as a game. It's something more like Bandersnatch on Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even going back to like something like Night Trap, maybe, where it's. But the gameplay in it, you don't really need it. Like, I think my worst part of the gameplay is when you've got to reconstruct what you're gonna do next. And there's only really one you can do, so it's like, let's explore. Well, all it does is it changes the screen so it's like a grid view, and you can explore different avenues to get to a point. And okay, that'll fail, so I'll go to this one. Oh, that one succeeds, so I'll go to that. And it's like, this is just me clicking around the screen to see what's that. Those kind of things are a little bit pointless, but it's attempting to make you feel like you're making decisions when really not too needed. But you do need that a bit of interaction, otherwise you're just going to be playing.
Yeah, you start getting lost if you don't have that. But I think, yeah, for that bit, let's say the example of where you're running on top of the freight containers.
Oh yeah.
And then you have to jump down on the robot. Like I did that, and one of the second times I did it, kind of spat, like when you're meant to spam X, I kind of spaffed that up. So when I landed, the woman at North has the same line. It's the exact same delivery for both times, but because I ruined it, it sounded so sarcastic that she's like, "Good job," and I was like, "Oh." But yeah, no, those instances. I think the only ones that were, I didn't mind the pre-construct ones.
Those are the ones I'm talking about. The quick time ones are okay, but the pre-construct ones I found to be a little bit too indulgent. Like, we don't need this because there's only really one outcome we can do.
Well, yeah. And effectively, what they're doing is making you just do the QTE before you see the animation.
Yeah,
that's all. That's literally all it is. Because what you do is do the QTE to see what the thing would be, and then you press X to animate it. And then when you do the thing, you usually have to do a small QTE to complete it, like press X to land, or etc.
It's kind of
really all they've done is offset it. They've tried to make it kind of like to play back to that facility of you are a cyborg, so you can think one step ahead. I understand what they're doing. It's what they should have done is made it more like a Fallout system where you scan the environment and it shows you, the three mesh models all doing their various routes, and it would just say a percentage over it.
Yep. Yeah.
And be like red, amber, green, and you'd be like, green every time. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And
make it easier. Yeah.
I mean, my issue with that was that it only cropped up when it was to do a bit of parkour to get up a vent or something, and not when everyone's getting shot. And okay, how can we reconstruct this so that everyone survives? It was only when it was really convenient and it was quiet. And if you're going to have that mechanic, really, it needs to be in every single frame and every single scenario. If you need to do something.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, like you say, it was a very safe mechanic because at the end of the day, it would never let you do the wrong choice. You couldn't go, all right, I'll commit to not being able to do it, please. It would say no. It would say this option is not valid. Move on to the next one until you found the right one. It was just a Goldilocks scenario, but it was always obvious which one to do anyway.
Yeah.
But again, for me, with these games, I think the gameplay mechanics and let's say the actual interaction is like not even maybe secondary as a component to the idea of these games. They are, the most story-driven a game that there can be because the QTEs are only really there to keep you interested. By rights, it should just be an animated film and they show you the bits they want you to see.
Yeah, I mean, I love a visual novel. Snatcher on the Sega CD is one of my favourite games. But it seems weird to me that you'd put all this effort in and get these actors in to then do a CGI game, which is basically a movie. And it's like, well, surely you could do just a movie, or something. Yeah. I know, I can understand why, because David Cage is an established game creator, and he's started his career back with whatever his first game was called, which was I think it was a lot better, interactive wise. But I don't know. It seems a bit odd that it's this disconnected as a game, and more of a I know it has to be because that's what his whole thing is. But in this day and age, it seems like such an odd choice I mean, it looks great. I mean, that's one of the things having a game like this. You can make it look fantastic because it's not going to be too over the top animation, or there's not going to be too many variables in what you can do. So you can put all that effort into graphics and animation and stuff. And that's one of the things I actually really like about it, is that you can kind of get lost in the scenes because it does seem like a proper film, and in certain parts. And some of the choices you have to make are annoyingly too moral. It's like, you're going to kill this person, or you're going to go home and fuck off this guy you've been, building up a huge relationship with. And they do actually make you feel really conflicted. And I think that's where the game excels, is the conflict of what you can choose. But there's never a middle ground either. Like it's one or the other. It's black or white. But there's never like the neutral choice. And I think that's kind of the good thing about it.
Neutral choice though. There is the thing is though, I think you have had a slightly different playthrough. I mean, whatever his name is incredibly annoying for the most part. Marcus. But otherwise, I think there are other parts that you might have liked if you got a bit further into it. And again, it can come down to whether you like that sort of game, in terms of if the story's not enough to hold you because there's not enough actual interaction with it, then it's one of those. It's that kind of game. But for me, I've enjoyed all of these ones, like Heavy Rain, Between Two Souls, and this sort of thing. They are very good to me because their storyline is enough. I mean, it would work better as a movie. Guaranteed, it would work better as a movie. Given the right circumstance.
Well, it's one of those, like, if it was a film and you picked one storyline to go with, it probably wouldn't be that, wouldn't be the best because.
Well, no, actually, yeah. But what I mean is, you'd probably get on with it better if it was a movie.
We'd be done in 90 minutes, but.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, no,
but it would just make the point. You'd be like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I get it. But the fact of it being an interactive thing is, like I say, you've only done the one playthrough. For me, doing the multiple playthrough, seeing a different ending to you on my initial playthrough, even there are things for me that stuck out that I think you might not have seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think on your first playthrough, you didn't even get to the concentration camp from.
No, I didn't, because So for me, then my playthrough was basically the first night. Let's say I got everything's pretty much normal, right? Like up to a certain point, you can't really fuck up. So I got to the point where I stayed in the squat for the night. Didn't get caught. I got caught. Had to run over the freeway. Everyone survives that. Christ, what they're called, Connor and Hank. They have a good relationship throughout, so I got the good ending with them. There's a point where everything intersects. Marcus was playing as, I did a peaceful protest, a peaceful thing. Didn't back down, just stood there, and luckily all your characters survive. If you don't charge, basically, if you just keep standing there, exactly, you charge. So if you just stand there, some people get killed, but the main ones don't, and then your public opinion goes up because people feel sorry for you. So if you play the game from that aspect and you don't retaliate, and then basically you get into a relationship with North, and then in the final ending battle or whatever it is, you can choose to kiss her or sing or blah 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 blah. So if you kiss her, it shows humanity that you've got feelings and you're already good. So whilst that was going on in the background, Kara and Alice did that whole thing where they go to the Jericho, they meet up with them, they try and get the visas and stuff. She figures out because did you even get to that point? You didn't, did you? Because you went straight.
No. We went to Jericho, and there was the twist of Alice that she's actually a robot as well.
Ah, cool. So did you get arrested trying to escape? Oh no, you got arrested trying to get to the bus, didn't you?
Yes. So I tried to save Jericho because he'd already been captured because I tried to hit a guy with a brick. Never pick up the brick, guys. That's
no. Pick up the brick. You have to approach slowly.
I think I dropped the brick.
Yeah, exactly. But no, if you don't fuck that, then basically you get to some guards and they have a little back and forth where they're like, because there's an option as soon as you start, Alice is shaking, and you're like, well, why are you shaking? And you have the option to turn off her temperature control or temperature sensor. And I felt a bit bad, but I was like, I'm going to not do that because as harsh as it sounds, I feel like her still having a human trait could be beneficial.
There you go. See, again, that's one of them things that I said before, where the thing that seems negative will always be the positive. So
well, yeah, but it's when you think about it laterally and logically.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's not always if it's like tell Alice you love her or tell her to fuck off. Telling her to fuck off isn't necessarily going to pay off later down the line.
I didn't see that. Yeah. I didn't see that part of the game.
No, yeah, always
fuck off, Alice.
Fuck off, Alice.
Kick her down the stairs.
Just chuck her out the window. So yeah, I mean, again, there's different results for that as well. Like the first night, you can try and get out the window. You can pick the gun up and fight him and kill him, or you can just leave through the window and he's then turned. That's what I liked about it is that if you don't kill him, he then turns up at the police station when you're playing as Connor, and he's sat in the chair giving a statement about it. And then
I didn't kill him, and that didn't happen to me on my playthrough.
You probably just didn't see him. He's just sat at one of the desks talking to a police officer. Because I didn't. I wish I had noticed it the first time. Because then subsequently later on, then if you've got out of basically when you get to Jericho, what you need to do when the guards turn up is play dead. If you play dead, then you can just get up and walk off when the guards bugger off.
Yes, that's what we did. They all storm in and start shooting people, and we dive on the floor and play dead. Yeah. And then after that, you go to run for the bus, and that's where I picked
exactly. Oh yeah, of course. No, you did do that, right? Yeah. Because obviously at that point, if you surrender, you get taken straight to the concentration camp.
Yeah.
Or get shot if you keep running. So yeah, after that, then if you get to those guards, on your way to the bus, I chose to keep Alice's coal settings on. And then you're talking to them, they're like, all right, I've got Luther as well, the most mismatched family in the world. Me with me bright white hair. Luther, the biggest, blackest guy you could find, and a tiny, tiny little white girl. It was like, none of us can be related in any way. Here's our family ID officer. And they're like, oh, there's a curfew, why are you out so late? So you have an excuse to say, right, the kid's sick, or my go-to was always picking her up from a sleepover. And then he goes, why? Because I don't know what it would say if she's not shaking, but he goes, why is she shaking? Is she all right? And you can say she's nervous, she's cold, or she's got the flu. So if you say she's got the cold or she's just cold, he's like, all right, okay, get her through then, quick. And then you just, and then what happens after that, which I really like, is how they can kind of talk to each other in, sort of on a telepathical kind of wavelength. Luther starts getting really agitated at that point. He's like, they're gonna find us out. We've got a gun. Let's fucking kill them. And you have to be like, chill out, mate. And then as you walk past the guard pipes up and says, excuse me. And he's going, fucking shoot him. And if you don't, which obviously I didn't, you turn around and he's like, oh, you dropped a glove, and gives it back to the girl. Which is what I did. On my second playthrough, I was like, oh, let's go crazy. I shot him, and then you turn around, the kid walks up to his dead body and picks up her glove, and he's like, he was just giving me my glove back. And you're like, fuck me. And everybody's rating's like, boo, boo.
Yeah, I think
it's just like,
I think he got to a point with the protest after Marcus basically becomes Wi-Fi Jesus, and he's like, boom, boom, and he's converting everyone that I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do it the good way anymore. And then when we got to that conflict with the barrier, I think there's a bit where one guard lifts his gun. You can either rush, stand still, retreat, or flee.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Let's rush him, see what happens. And from then on, I was like, okay, this got far more interesting all of a sudden. Let's see what happens.
So that's where Marcus died, right?
No, he didn't die. He survives.
Okay.
A lot of people get shot, but there's a lot of quick time events where you have to nut people and kick them in the shin and pull guns off people and butt them. But yeah, I think if you do it wrong, you could potentially die. But him and North basically become Neo and Trinity from the Matrix, and they F shit up a lot.
I think interestingly with that, then, so you do a mission where you have to break into, the dock or whatever it is to steal all the parts. Did you?
Oh, the worst mission. Is it?
Yeah,
Is that the one where you've got you end up tagging stuff? No.
No.
It's the one where you have to tag everything.
That's the Revolution one.
That one was dreadful.
That was crap.
I had to take
that
two
was
runs
the
of
protest
that.
one.
Yeah,
that one's boring.
Yeah, so
no, it's where you're all jumping over all the cargo crates and stuff.
That was okay. Yeah, I really like the self-driving trucks. I don't know what it is, but I like them. Yeah, no, I did all that one.
But if you do that bit, then so what you get is the guy that works there, and you have to kind of convert him.
That's right. Yeah,
and get him to distract the guy. You took him with you, didn't you? You were like, yeah, come with us.
Yep, he was ours.
Yeah, exactly. If you didn't do that, you would have died at that protest because he jumps in to save you.
Okay.
That's what happens when you start getting kicked off on. He runs up and takes out the first guy.
Okay. Yeah.
If not, you get shot straight the fuck away.
Yeah, that's what happened. And then after that, in that stealing the cargo, you have to go into the office bit where you have to steal the keys for the truck. I think I can't.
Yeah. You can choose not to do that. You can choose to just get in the truck and bugger off.
I know I stole the keys, but I think I didn't kill them. I knocked them out. I think. And then we sped off. Yeah.
Yeah. Killed him second time.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
They're dead.
But then so that's what I mean. So if you sort of do all of those things, get into a good position with all of that, you don't die as him. Obviously, the story is the same. He continued, you can continue the android thing. Obviously, if he dies, then North automatically leads a violent uprising, whereas if he survives, you can choose to do a peaceful one. So if you're doing that, and then meanwhile your car are trying to get the bus to, I think they said Coventry then, Canada.
Would not be surprised.
It's slightly further north than where I am right now.
But it's slightly more post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, exactly. You get to a bus terminal, and then there's an exchange where you haven't got any tickets. There's a family with a newborn baby. You go over. As they're getting on the bus, they obviously drop the tickets. There's the option to take the tickets or be honest and give them back.
That's convenient, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've done both of those, though. Because obviously if you don't tell them you've got them, then everybody's opinion of you goes down. No, just Alice, because she's got too many morals for a child. So basically, you can get on the bus, and then you end up at border control at the other side.
Canada, isn't it?
Canada,
where they accept everyone.
Well, yeah, and you've missed a complete character actually. There's a character called Rose, who's a woman who owns like a farm or something. Oh,
she's great.
Oh, did you meet?
Yeah, I met Rose. Yeah, and then
so that's before, right? Okay.
You have to do the whole bit where you have to kind of hide the evidence from the policeman that you are actually a robot.
Yeah. Okay, so that is before then. Cool. Well, basically, she turns up and she's like, I don't know how this is gonna go, and blah blah blah. Like, so you have options to, when you get to the counter, if you want to blame someone or cause a distraction, you can be like, she's the one, and try and run past. But if Marcus is on the quest line where he's doing a peaceful protest, the guy will scan you with the gun to check if you're a robot or not, and he looks up to a security camera. If there's a peaceful protest and the public opinion is high, he's like, just go. And you get across the border and everything's fine, and that's the end basically.
Okay.
If not, if you don't sort of go through all that, I'm guessing you can get pinched at the border and then sent to the concentration camp if the public opinion is low of you. But if you choose to give the tickets back, you can then walk off to a car park where Rose will be with her son in the car, offering to take you to the border where you'll get a boat over.
Oh, okay.
And then at that stage, depending on whether the Luther's there or not, like a gunboat will turn up and shoot the shit out of everything. Luther will die, and you have to push him overboard. You have to chuck everything overboard. Then it goes all a bit Titanic.
It's a barrage of bad luck for these guys, isn't it? Nothing can just go right.
But it's kind of like Kara and Alice make it to the other side. Kara almost dies, but I think survives. But there's also a chance if whatever his name is, the guy that owned them, that was beating the shit out of him, Todd. I think it was.
Todd, yeah, he's Todd.
Yeah. If you didn't kill him, he turns up at the bus terminal, and he will start calling the police after you. And depending on what you found out about him, you can choose to reason with him, or he'll dob you in and stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, I didn't find out anything about that guy, but I imagine you are a replicant of his wife and child that something bad happened to.
Well, they just left him basically.
Oh.
It's just that they left and he wanted a replacement, but he was always bitter and he couldn't fucking hack it. So it's like if you earn the trust from Alice at the start of the game, you get a key to her box which has drawings in which show what's happened, and that gives you more information. And then there's I think pictures and something else you can see, because there is an option to sort of sympathise with him, and you say, look, I know your wife left you and that she took your daughter away from you, but we aren't them. And we aren't replacements, we are alive, and we need to be alive, blah 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 blah. You put on the spiel and you can get out of there. Alternatively, you can get Luther to cause her a distraction. He'll start shooting and just leg it. So there's what I like about it is that there is that certain continuity in terms of if you don't kill him at the very start of the game, which could be a minor choice for you, he will turn up almost at the resolution of the game, and his arc will kind of complete where you'll see him as Connor in the police station.
Yeah,
you're not necessarily going to pick up on all of these things because you're not looking out for them, but these things are there and they make up a really really in-depth sort of story when you start revisiting them and stuff like that. So I think for me, I reckon that you would have enjoyed it more had you done a second playthrough where you did the opposite of what you did. You had a shit relationship with Connor and Hank, and you kept everyone else alive.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that makes me want to go back is to do the complete opposite of what I did. What I don't have much patience for is to go back and do sort of what I did, but slightly a little bit different. Because it gives you that... One of the things I really like about it is that it gives you that timeline, and you can see, I could have branched off there and done something completely different. It shows you exactly what you missed. But
exactly? But like I was saying, it's that weird sort of out of the blue continuity that really appealed to me. I think I told you about this at the time. The very first mission you do as Connor, or your introduction where you're doing the hostage situation. If you talk to you try and help the policeman that's out there on the balcony.
He's down by the side.
He's down. Yeah, he's down. If you talk, try and save him. When you get to the radio station mission, he will just come up and talk to you and be like, "Oh, Connor, do you remember me?" It may not happen if you're doing the good playthrough. I'm not too sure.
I think it happened to me, but I just didn't realise what the connection.
Well, because I did it on the playthrough where I was killing Connor. So obviously the mechanic of that is it says whenever you die, you lose a bit of information. So when he comes up to you, he's like, "Oh, thanks for helping me out." You're like, "I don't know who you are," and it's like, "Oh, okay." But I liked that side of it because then you have things like when you have to go to the strip club, you can choose to kill the two robots there.
What are they called? Shirley's or something?
Tracy's,
yeah. I killed one.
Well, then the other one kills herself.
That's right, yes, you shoot herself in the face, yeah.
Automatically. But it's things like, if you do that, then when you go later at the end of the game to review the evidence, those two will be there and you can fucking rip the head off one and confuse the other one into telling you where to go. It's kind of terrifying. Or for me on the first playthrough, that evidence room had nothing in it bar the first guy.
Simon.
But
not Simon, sorry, Simon. Yes. Yeah. Now, he was the guy that I thought was Simon, because that's why I got confused, because there were two blonde broken androids, and I thought, oh, Simon's in the evidence room. And I thought, if he's there, how has he just been back to help me with the last mission? Then I realised, oh, it's the guy from the very start who gets sniped in the face. Yeah.
Well, yes. But the thing with that is that obviously one of the points is that all these models of AI reoccur, and they show up. You see the same characters, somewhere else as just, the robot version of themselves as a courier or... whatever. You see the same models, if that makes sense. But I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, I think where it really accomplishes is where Not necessarily the story, but how it's put together. It's kind of like got the Pulp Fiction thing of the narrative structures of each outcome. And I think it's better built as a maze than a game, and it's tying up those loose threads, which is what really puts it together as a thing to enjoy. And I don't think it's for everyone. It's a difficult one to recommend as well, because it's like, oh, what are you doing it? It's like, well, not really much. Like, you put the bins out, and now and again you smash square to open a window or something. It's like, oh, that sounds good. But it's a little bit more than that, because it's quite good at doing that really subtle, intense pace of, you need to make a decision now, otherwise what you might not want to decide is going to be lost forever. It puts you on the spot a lot. That's what it is. It's a put you on the spot kind of game. And a lot of the time, it can make you feel a little bit, because some of the decisions are so morally unbalanced. Like, you can either shoot the guy or pet his dog. And it's like, okay. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh fuck, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And I quite like it, but it's at the same time it's a bit, you're pushing me a little bit too much to. I know what you're trying to do, but it's a little bit. You're doing it a little bit too unrealistically. There needs to be more, rationale towards all of these parts. I felt. Well,
yeah, but again, I think it's unfortunate that you sort of didn't get to replay or experience some other aspects of it. Because again, there's things like when you're, for me, doing the achievement, which is basically the Terminator achievement, I'll be back, which is where you kill Connor at every single available opportunity. That was heartbreaking for me, because what I had to make sure is that I, coincided that with everyone dies as soon as they can or whatever, the worst playthrough. So it was the most down experience ever. Everybody died. It was really harsh. But for me, having that first experience with building that relationship with Hank and, trying to earn his trust and stuff, when then you do the opposite, and it's like the first thing you do is you spill his drink over in the bar, and you're like, oh. And then it gets to another point where, you do that, you withhold information, or, you have a go at him, you threaten him, and you kill the traces. You basically do the bad thing in every scenario. But because you have to die, every time you die, Hank has to watch you die. So by the end of it, he's in serious depression. And then, he has a go at you at one point. There's a bit where he goes out and you're on a bridge, and he's talking, and you can kind of, if you found the clues, talk about his son and stuff.
And he pulls a gun on you, I think.
And he pulls a gun on you. If you're having a good playthrough, he just puts the gun away and goes away. If you're doing the bad playthrough, he shoots you. So then when you turn up, he's like, oh, God! Like,
you again.
And it just never ends. And then I think one of the final missions you do with him, you go to his house and you're like, you need to come on. And he's sat there with the revolver and the whiskey. And you're like, come on, get out. We're going for a thing. And he's like, fuck off. Get the fuck out. And your only option is to leave. And if you, exactly like I did, go to the front door and just linger that half second, you just hear a gunshot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's like, oh, fuck. And he's dead. So you literally can kill every single character.
So there's a question with that. Was that an enjoyable experience? Or is that just there to, flesh out everything that was available? Is that entertaining as a game to be able to do all that? Because I feel like I want to experience it because I want to know all the content. But I don't necessarily feel like I want that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, again, it was heartbreaking because it's not... Generally, if you're not a complete psychopath, it doesn't really feel great to be a horrible bastard all the time.
Not all the time.
But occasionally, it's quite funny. So, up until that point, I had no problem with it. I was killing Connor repetitively. I was being a prick to people. It was just kind of funny because at the end of the day, it's something you wouldn't do. It wasn't my initial reaction. It wasn't the thing that I automatically did like I did on my first playthrough. So it's like, oh, let's have fun. Let's just see what happens and let's see the cutscenes and the deaths. It's kind of good. Maybe it's gory. Maybe it's fun. But for me, everything else was fine. I had no trouble whatsoever killing Marcus. I couldn't.
Oh
wait.
God, no! He can.
To be fair, even
in the
Alice
waste
and Kara,
disposable unit.
Yeah, Kara, I wanted to kill as soon as I met her, because no, Alice, sorry, because stereotypical whiny, needy child kind of, I'm cold. You're a fucking robot. Shut up. You are not cold. And again, for me, obviously by this point, spoilers out the arse, but it was obvious that she was a robot
from the get go. I was
second.
like, yes,
yeah,
okay, of course she is.
The revolutionary things, it was like, she never eats. She doesn't give a shit about how cold she is. It doesn't. Nothing seems to matter. And even when you see it does pan back to it later in the thing where Luther's like, you've always known, and it pans back and you see the leaflet where you see that her face on the leaflet saying she's a fucking robot.
Yep.
So but you notice that straight away, because if you're paying any attention, you already know that the model number, as weird as it sounds, because you've heard it a couple of times, that Kara is like a KX400 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you see the pamphlet and it says like the EQ10, you know that's not her.
Yeah.
You know he hasn't bought her, and the fact that she pauses on it means that there's a recognition, which means she knows it's somebody else.
Also,
so it's kind of like you kind of put it together quite easily.
Yeah. And also the fact that you take her from her home and it's not registered as a child abduction. It's robots have escaped. It's like if a robot stole a child, that would be the next beat in the game instantly. You'd be on it, but it's not.
But that could have actually been a slightly more interesting storyline, couldn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, that should have been the big moral decision, whether this robot with a consciousness can take a human child and have an actual reason for doing so outside of human society, but instead the guy's like, oh, my toys have ran off.
Yeah. But it also would have been a good outcome and a better justification for the child character had it got to a stage where they hunt her down or whatever, and it gets to a point where they're trying to kill Kara or whatever as she's defending Alice, and Alice suddenly comes out of nowhere and starts saying, you want to know why this is happening? It's because my father's a fucking a monster, and he did this to my mum, and yada yada and yada, and just lays into the sort of whatever the themes of assault. Christ, what's it called?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's when we could rewrite the story arcs to be better for all day.
But what I'm saying is that it could have been a bit of a justification if
for that whole story
she came out as a stronger character at that point and said, it's abuse. There we go. I've been an abuse sufferer. He's an abusive father. He's done this. He's done that. And the only person in the world that's tried to stand up for me isn't even human. What does that tell you about yourself? That would have been a better statement.
The way it starts off is, oh, where are we going on the bus? I don't know, somewhere safe. Okay. And it's like, well, surely she should be like, well, actually, no, I do actually live there. That's my dad, even though he's a piece of shit.
Well, she had absolutely no interest in him, did she?
No.
She didn't speak up. She didn't say, oh, well, he's just, literally, she was a non-character.
Well,
she was primarily there as an objective. Take care of her, do this for her. She had no exposition or input, save for those pictures at the start.
No. And
she didn't ever offer anything to it.
What is the term they use for a robot that's gone rogue? What do they call it? Like a rebel or something like that? I can't remember. Deviant, that's it.
Deviant,
so,
yeah.
Surely Alice...
I was like, Ronin?
Surely Alice, to go along with all this, has to be a deviant herself. In which case, she wouldn't still be abiding by the I'm a small girl and that's my dad kind of theme. So I always felt like that story, once that twist happened, it was like, okay, doesn't really make sense, because if she is a deviant, she'd be along with Alice the whole way. There would be no reason for her to have the mindset of a child if she was a robot. Unless she was programmed to still abide by human rules.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I guess she, as much as they say, they break the programming, they still kind of are who they were programmed to be.
Yeah, of course.
They still have the same mindset or sensibilities. So basically, and you see it, a good tie-in for that is the reason that Kara cares for Alice still actually isn't because she likes Alice. When you're doing that procession where you're doing the Jesus Wi-Fi thing, you actually call a Kara model over to you who's pushing a pram.
Yep.
And basically it signifies, and is specified later in it, that is what her model is. She is a babysitter care unit.
Yeah.
So even though breaking her program, she's like, oh, I care for Alice because I care for her. It's kind of like, no, you're still doing what you were designed to do.
I don't think I got that.
But you're
I don't think I saw that
but you're
part.
kind of like deciding to continue doing it.
Well, I kind of got the impression that she was meant to be a representation of his ex-wife, even though she would have been far too, good looking for that fat guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
no.
Yeah, and then
she was
programmed
she was
to
a
love him in a
standard
way
unit.
and care for the
you
family.
see her, yeah. I think you see her a couple of times actually, because you definitely see her as a woman pushing the buggy towards you, and then you call her over and she joins the ranks. They make a point of that.
You see them all at some point because you see another Marcus, I think, he's in like a fashion shop window.
Yeah. And obviously there's North sees herself in the thing where you're doing the demonstration.
Isn't she in the she's in the strip club as well, I think, isn't she? She's a pleasure model.
She is, yeah. Well, it's alluded to when you talk to her, and actually when you're playing as Connor, when you look at the files, you'll see all of them. You'll see Cara on there, and you'll see North on there. And her thing says that she was rented to a man, went back to his house, who was found, I can't remember what it was, strangled or with a gunshot wound, and she was missing.
Yeah.
So you kind of know her backstory. So when you get to a point where you can ask her about it, she's like, I don't want to fucking talk about it. And then her opinion of you goes down. But then if you get later in the game and you're all lovey-dovey with her, she actually tells you that she was a pleasure model, basically.
Yeah.
So it's quite nice how all those things are there. They all kind of tie in and shit. So for me, the overarching themes felt justified to me. It didn't feel over hammy on my first playthrough, even though I was doing the most generic things. Keep them all alive, be a good character, be a good little boy, but it still sat quite well with me.
No, I always felt that the justification for the robots' motives were justified. But I always, at the same time, felt like if this was real life and these robots had, they'd had an uprising against humans, we would not stand. We would just fucking destroy them all. We'd be like, no, bang, and they'd all be gone. We'd just wipe them all clean. They'd be all fragged. There's no. I don't think we would have entertained the idea of we are humans too, and we should have our own exist. I just don't think we would. Humans aren't that. I mean, there's homeless people we don't care about. Forget robots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We don't already care about other humans.
No, exactly. Some people we live with were like, fuck that guy today. Let alone my android daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
What is she
I
doing?
don't really care.
I don't know. It seemed,
But that's a whole different thing.
That is a whole different story.
This is theoretical though, because if you.
Is it?
On the level that they've got them in the game, right? If they looked like an authentic person and seemed to display all the correct qualities of sentience and having a laugh and having a joke and what would make them so different?
Well, that's the thing. I think
even though it's a different origin, and again the theme of AI or robotics is kind of always, whenever it's used realistically, much like the aliens in District 9, are all just a simile.
Christopher Johnson.
They're all just a simile for race or race relations or racism. So they're all just symbolic. It's not so much about completely 100%. It's about robots.
No.
It is about race relations, or interrace or interspecial relations, whatever it is. It's just about prejudice,
always heavily about prejudice.
Yeah, prejudice and slavery and
racism,
servitude.
everything.
Yeah. It for me, even though it can seem to be a bit cliched in areas, what I appreciate it for is a resurgence of highlighting relevant issues to a new market, if that makes sense, to a new base. And I did really enjoy it. Like I say, the good playthrough was good because I really enjoyed the bond between the police characters. But the bad playthrough I thought was fucking hilarious because Connor just sliding off a roof and not latching on was great. Getting hit by a fucking bus and whatnot. Even though it was kind of horrible in some areas, it was still kind of funny in others. You know? That was non-intentional, clearly. But I think by contrast, had I done it where, you know, I do the bad playthrough and then they end up in the concentration camp and yada yada yada. And weirdly, if you choose to do a violent protest with Marcus, you can actually save them from the concentration camp because you'll just go in and save everyone from there.
Okay.
So you don't actually have to escape. That's basically what you can't get out. I think the only way you can get out is if you take a body or something. It's like you take a body off to the dump and then you can just leg it through there and leave Alice and Luther behind, and you can survive. Otherwise, if Marcus is doing a violent uprising and you're there, he will just set you free if you've managed to survive. So again, there's so much interconnectedness that forces you to play it in different ways. I really like that. I enjoy that in a game because, again, I know I'm going to play it multiple times because I'm a trophy whore and a completionist. So for me to see different content in different aspects when I'm trying to just go for these different things, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're actually going to get something
as a
different.
gamer and as a fan of story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can only say yes. There were some aspects I liked, and realistically, they're only negligible. I just didn't really like Marcus. Not 100% just because of Jesse Williams, and basically it's based off his model and his acting and stuff. I don't think he was awful, but whether it was him or his character, it just seemed a bit flat. I get it, they're robots, etc.
I think he was
he's a bit flat and emotionless, and
he was the worst characterized, and his arc happened way too quick. Like at the very start of the game, he's very unsure of what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, no, he's very confident. He is this new found Jesus figure. He's going around being the new revolutionary, and it was like, that happened really, really quick for you. Where everyone else is really well paced, and he's just. It's
just like it's the Matrix and he's Neo. It's an overly. He's got too much status.
I don't think it's even just that. It's just that his sections compared to the others, they're a bit boring. Like you can.
Oh no! Yeah.
Even though there's not much gameplay
going on.
differentiation between all of the others, it's you walk around, you do a quick time event, it's fine. But his are all his missions, his dialogue, his actions and story. They're not entertaining. You don't have to enjoy something to find it entertaining. Like you watch like a film like that's difficult to get through. Like you watch something like Bad Lieutenant with Harvey Keitel where he's masturbating into a car of women. It's like that's not fun, but it's entertaining because you're like you watch and go, that's some brave acting, and I appreciate.
God damn.
I appreciate someone put pen to paper to make this happen. And it's like that was a good bit of visceral, character study almost. Whereas his whole character was a bit like, it's like okay, it's the shittest comic book rise to glory you've seen. Whereas all the others had an actual. It felt like this was more of a backstory, but all the other characters had a backstory, and now they're developing into actual interesting stories.
Yeah, weirdly, does this make sense? It felt like the first Infamous game.
Oh,
his story.
I kind of know what you mean.
Like very flat and a very bland character who you gave no fuck about, but you just played to see it through.
Yeah, a little bit like an old PC game or an old arcade game where you wouldn't get a story, but you get like a text crawl, and you'd be thrown straight in. But he was always like because his character as well influenced so much throughout the whole underlining story, because he was influencing the environment. It felt more like his was the less. The one you can manipulate the least, because he's going to influence such a big thing because he has the public view. It's like nothing he can do can be too intricate. It's got to be the big event, and it's always the small stories which are more interesting. The granular kind of the little bit of dialogue rather than the I am here, I am Mecca. It's, no one cares, Marcus.
No, but that's what I'm really glad you touched on that, because that was going to be something I was going to say, is that you can't have too much diversity within his storyline, because his storyline directly affects the majority aspect of the game. So it has to be very black and white. Yeah. It has to be good thing, bad thing. Come on.
Yeah,
really.
Everything is revolving
it can't be too,
around
it can't
what
be
he's
too
doing.
grey area. Yeah.
It's almost like
because with other.
Go on.
Oh, go. No,
I can say it's almost like his bit shouldn't be playable, and like that should be his whole
just cutscenes.
A news broadcast on a TV in the corner of a pub when you're talking to Hank, like, oh, that's happening in the background. Then it'd be really subtle, like, oh, this revolution is happening, but we're not paying attention to it because everything is just, decided on by this little conversation we're having. But that's there in the background, and we know it's happening, but we don't have to pay attention. But when you throw it down their throats, it kind of undermines the small stories that are happening because this big revolution's happening. So who cares about these two, prostitute robots, because bigger stuff is happening over there, and then we're trying to figure out this really small minutiae of, what it means to be Connor. I think it really undermines. It's almost like a separate game. It doesn't follow the pace of everything else.
No, I can completely agree with what you're saying to a certain extent, but I think one of the things to take into consideration is the idea of them doing this as an interactive format. Christ, I had a really good point for this, and it's going when I'm trying to think of the right words. But the fact that the story relies heavily on your input. Basically, the story isn't so much we've got a story to tell. I think it's more about making you feel like you are responsible or that you have a part to play. Because I think, again, it's the game in itself is metaphorical in terms of, let's just say, the general state of the world in terms of race relations or whatever, is the fact that these things that you think potentially it's not it shouldn't have to involve me, or I don't need to do this. You have to take a part in, and like the minutiae of some of the other tasks or whatever. Like you have to decide what the correct way to do this is, or what the correct way to go about negotiating these things is. It's basically like kind of like a moral guide in a way.
It's a lot of it
to say like really think about it. Really think about the consequences. Yeah. Which is why I kind of respect it, because then what it does, if you're playing it and you're really really trying to play it and really trying to think about it, you get those main points of their story really come forward to you, in terms of it isn't about so much Marcus's story of, oh, I'm going to do a big protest, or maybe I'll smash a light, or I'll just draw on it. It's not that sort of black and white. Those aren't the things that really make up the difference. It's the smaller choices that you make going through. It's the smaller choices that the normal or average characters make, or that every character must make. It kind of hammers that point home that if you want to affect this change, if you want this revolution, or you want something good to happen, everybody has to do their bit. Everybody has to be working in sequence to affect something good. If everybody just does their own thing and fucks up, it's not going to change, and it's not going to be a positive outcome. So I think that's like an overall statement for the game and what it's trying to achieve in terms of it sort of comparing its, these AI have the rights to be what they are. You can apply that to saying equal rights for just men and women.
Oh, of course, yeah.
To races, to whatever you want to expand it to.
It harks back completely to any sort of liberation that's happened in the past. But I think my main problem with it is that Marcus doesn't seem fit enough to put that message across. Because if you look at Connor and you look at Kara, they are heavily portrayed as a robot. Marcus kind of isn't. He never seems like he thinks he's a robot. Like he never. The way his character is, he's kind of like the OJ. Yeah, he's just like, oh yeah, I'm a human. Yeah, what of it? It's like no, there's no. But all the other characters have a moral dilemma and like an internal dialogue with themselves, like that existential crisis of, oh, what, am I human? What am I doing? Am I real? I never feel like he has. It's just he's more manipulated by his surroundings, and I don't know. He fits badly. For me in the narrative, he's more of his necessity to progress things. But I would have preferred it if we could have chopped that out completely and just had these small stories about these coincidental characters, and maybe had it somehow tie up at the end. You know, the most interesting part is when you were Lance Henderson's character as Marcus, and he gets him to paint a picture. But instantly from that, you're off to a running messianic kind of Jesus figure. And did you notice as well? I think we spoke about it previously. There was a film that I watched not too long back where it's the exact plot of his character arc, where it's the black guy. He's a helper, and he goes to look after. I think is it a French film? He goes to look after the guy in the wheelchair who's an artist.
This is You told me it was by another title, and it was an American one or something. I can't remember what you said it was called, but if it's the same thing I'm thinking of,
almost certain it is.
Because it's the same plot. I know it is, which is why I won't watch it. Originally, it was a film called The Intouchables.
Yep.
Which was about a guy who was like let's say he was very rich, in a wheelchair, needed a helper, but
he's an artist.
I can't remember.
In the one I watched, he was an artist, and he encourages his helper to paint to get out his inner emotions and like to be free. And it's like, this is the exact same story.
Okay, that's a little bit different. But basically, The Intouchables is like the exact same setup, and again, it's a black carer, white guy in the wheelchair, which is why I immediately thought it was just a bastard version of the original, because in that one, I mean, it might just be slightly different, but the same overall arc, is the fact that obviously the guy likes this carer because he's not actually a carer. When he turns up for the interview, he's just there because the doula sent him. Yeah. And it's the last thing he wants to do.
Yeah, it sounds awfully familiar.
It's basically like My Fair Lady.
Well, it's Larry David and Leon, isn't it? It's DJ. Yeah. It's the same dynamic.
It's that whole rich man, poor man. Oh, actually, we've got a lot in common despite our differences. Thing. But The Intouchables is incredibly touching because of its aspects of the guy in the wheelchair. He can't really do anything because love life wise, etc. And then obviously the guy that he employs is a bit of a bad boy. Let's say. Miscreant, bit of a drug dealer, bit of a little bit woo, little bit way, a little bit. So them coming together and their relationship evolving and lots of Earth, Wind and Fire, which that's instant. Win.
Okay, that is the same film because he goes to a party and he dances to Earth, Wind and Fire. So I feel like it's
this is what I mean. This is why I see it for it's almost like they haven't remade it; they've just bastardized it and basically plagiarized it to a certain point. Where they've just changed some of the details and whatnot. But I would highly recommend, regardless of whether we're talking about Detroit Become Human or not, that you watch The Intouchables.
Okay.
That is a very good film.
Well,
I would suggest that.
As a side note to all that film, which is the kind of basis for the plot of Marcus's character, I feel was a much interesting part until he branched off away from Lance Henriksen. I feel like if it's stuck with him having a relationship with an old man, his character could have been so much more interesting trying to learn what it was to become human, as the title says, from this old man. He was one of the only people in this environment that actually likes these robots. He takes them on board. He sees them as a friend, but that's so quickly, smashed, and he has to flee because you push his son over or whatever happens. That it.
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, what they should have done is made maybe any of the other characters the leader of the revolution who got to make the choices and yada yada yada. And for his character, he comes to it quite late when everything kicks off, and suddenly he's taken from his world of comfortable splendor and then thrust into the pit, rather than the weird exchange where I'm guessing you don't do shit and then the old man dies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
Well, either way, but what you can. What's great is if you stand up for him, you push his son over, and he hits his head and breaks his neck.
It's brilliant. It's that $1 Million Baby.
He literally just goes blah, blah, blah.
He's like, "You better run." He's like, "Oh, okay." Then you just wake up in the pit. So
instead of, I don't know whether you got the graveyard scene.
I did, yeah, where you're taking out eyeballs and changing your arm and stuff.
Well, instead of that, you go back to the house to talk to him. And obviously he's got a new robot looking after him, which is like a weird little awkward scene. And then you just have to go, I need you to do me a favour. And he lets you in. Because that's the stock line. He says, anytime you need to interact with another robot. And then there's a bit of a conversation with him. And it's kind of this whole like, he's not actually pissed that you killed his son too much. It's just that he's concerned for you and stuff.
Yeah,
like
I think.
So there are some really good moments, but again, you've got to pick it apart. You've got to keep going in and looking at it from different angles, which is the benefit of the game format.
Yeah, the playthrough I did, I think later on in the game, like when you become the resistance fighter, you do go back to Lance Hendrickson, and he's fine with you because he sees you more of a son than his piece of shit druggy son. And that's quite a nice scene because it's like, we knew that, but now it's established. So this is who he sees as his actual dad. And I quite like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because then there's that little bit where you walk past his actual son and just give him a little stare down and stuff like that. So again, there are for me a lot of really nice moments, really good moments that I guess it just depends on the look of your playthrough, what you decide to do, and what actually coincides with the other things, because ultimately you don't know what you're going to do when you affect anything.
Yeah, I think as we've been talking, I do enjoy all the small moments. That's what it is. It's a game made up of moments. But I think my biggest disappointment is around the whole Jericho movement. And because it doesn't matter how you really play, it's going to always. It's always going to torpedo towards that Jericho robot resistance. And I feel like it's because you can play it so small to lead to such a big ending. I feel like it would have been better if all the endings had stayed small and maybe even gotten smaller and like really broken down into the internal dialogue of these robots rather than being, we're all free.
I think what they could have done is made it slightly more indirect if they kept all the characters, maybe elongated that process of where you're taking care of that guy for a bit longer and you don't come to Jericho till right at the end maybe, and then make a choice whether you're going to join the resistance and go on the march or bugger off. That would have been probably a better arc for the character.
For me, I think
if it had...
The safe haven ending is always the worst in any film. Like, think of all the films we've watched where people are trying to escape to a place. Like, you remember when we watched Annihilation, and it was like, they've ended up at the place where it's meant to be safe. Oh, they're all blind. It's like, no, it's just... There shouldn't be...
Bird Box.
Bird Box, sorry, not Annihilation. Well, Annihilation was equally as weird, but... that was Bird Box.
Not as bad as Bird Box.
No, that's what I'm thinking of, Bird Box. But it always feels like they've started with an ending and worked backwards rather than try to logically plan how we're going to get there. And it really annoys me that, okay, you've crossed the border and then it cauterises everything that came before it. Like, it kind of... Once you know that safe haven's there, you've got a reason to just abandon everything that got you to that point, and the whole game becomes about getting to an end goal. And it kind of diminishes all the repercussions of what you've done. And I don't know, it feels a bit lazy. Not in a terrible way, because I do appreciate all the little points that you do across the way, but I don't like that conclusion of a resistance and an uprising. I don't know.
Well, I mean, what else are you going to do? That's Star Wars.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's
every other game. It's.
I know.
Again,
I mean,
there is no other way to.
Well, that's the thing. How are you going to review it? Write a better ending. I mean, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, again, all you can do is do the down ending occasionally to throw people off guard. So they could have done it where no matter what you do, you go for a really peaceful thing and you just get mowed down, and you're all destroyed. And they're like, "Yeah, AI are all fucked."
Well, no, I
like
Kara's good ending, because her good ending is we're going to sneak into Canada and pretend to be real, pretty much. And that's kind of how the ending of Ex Machina goes. You've seen that film where she escapes and goes, and she's like, "Well, yeah, I'm going to pretend to be human. I'm going to grow hair, whatever, and I'm just going to try and hide in plain sight." And then you've got room for a sequel, where you've got this robot who is, masquerading as a human, and now she's living in a human society. So that is what it is to become human, because she's actually living that now. She's escaped from her old poverty into this brand new life. Then you've got a whole new plot. Then you've got a reason to have. You've built a good backstory. But just to say that the world's going to change because all the robots have uprised, that doesn't leave any individual character doesn't leave them interesting. It just makes them all completely the same now, because every robot they are an enemy. They are a thing now. It kind of takes away their personality. I suppose.
Well, again, yeah. I mean, again, this could come down to choices within the game because they're an enemy because ultimately, if you got to the point where Marcus died and you're now North leading the revolution, she will automatically lead a violent one, therefore making the public hate you and make them attack you. Whereas if you do the what you're technically meant to do really and do the whole become human air quotes route, then the public see you as a sympathetic thing, and then you start getting somewhere. So realistically, if you play it in a good playthrough, the next game should be about how now the AI have equal rights, but there's still, factions and gangs that want to wipe them out, and then you have to investigate that and things like that. More like a Blade Runner-y, but reverse.
Yeah.
Where you're hunting down the humans or the people responsible for trying to wipe out the AI. That would be a really good sequel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's what made it for me is that I think you touched on it earlier, where you said something about how it was kind of like obvious they were going to be accepted or something along those lines. But there is a stage in the game where you get to a press conference, and you're speaking as a White House representative, and depending on the current outlook on the AI and how they're perceived by the public, you can get asked some differing questions. No, it's the same questions, but she will have a different
I do remember
response
this
to
bit.
it.
Yeah, I remember you were the woman.
It's really annoying. Everyone's just like, Madam President. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But basically, there's a point where if you're playing the good playthrough, someone will say, "Well, Madam President, isn't it true that people are actually very sympathetic towards them and they see what the government's doing as quite a bad thing?" And she'll like, "Right, that's it. This just whatever."
Yeah.
And then when she comes on next, and she's like, "We've decided to do a peace treaty," and you can tell how disingenuous she it's not that bad of a delivery, but you can tell how disingenuous and how pushed they feel to humour and how put out they are to give them this equal rights. That when you play it in the inverse, how happy she seems when she says, "Yeah, we've wiped them all out. That's the end of it. Tickety boo."
Yeah.
It feels more genuine because you're like, that's actually
That's
more
that's
true
what
to
she actually
life.
feels. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like all these little micro things within it. Maybe it might just be my inference because that's the way I view some global politicians, etc. But those instances help to give you that connectedness with the game where you feel like, even though with Marcus maybe not so much it's too black and white, but other times you feel like you're really you're trying to bring in the guy peacefully, you're trying not to hurt people, you're trying to establish a relationship and prove that androids are just as good as humans.
I think that might have been better hit home if how as you're playing, like, you do something as Kara and you don't like hold the guy up in the gun store, your public opinion might go up. If it actually shows you, okay, this is where you are on the public opinion scale, because he just says it goes up and down, so you never really know that, okay, as Connor, I didn't kill someone. Perhaps
that's not valid. It's public opinion is only affected by the decisions that Marcus makes.
Oh, really? It's not made by anything else. I'm sure when. No, but there is a knock-on effect, because I'm sure when you get seen on the security camera, and then it's in the police station, it's kind of on the telly, public opinion goes down, or no, it might be on a magazine as well or something like that. So there are little things you can do as in the more incidental characters of kind of.
Yeah, no. You can. To be fair, if you choose to kill Todd, it will say an AX-400 has murdered a man. Public opinion will probably be a bit lower.
Yeah.
Etc. Like if it then says, "Oh, you've done this," etc. But basically, Connor doesn't affect anything, if that makes sense. He only affects his relationship with Hank. Whereas, I guess early on, Kara's actions will make a bit of a dent, but overall it's really only Marcus's ones, because it's those two events. It's basically if you do a peaceful protest and a peaceful second protest, that's what will make the difference.
I think my main criticism of the game is that he was the least interesting character, but he had the most effect overall on the story, and it should have been the other way around. Yeah,
but again, if you think about that, it's to force that unavoidability of you can't really do a grey area and go, well, I didn't expect that to happen. It has to be quite black and white in terms of that, because what I found interesting was the two polar opposites in terms of that was Marcus's decisions were very obvious what you wanted to do for.
They were very cliche, yeah.
Very cliche, very obvious. But there were sections where you play as Connor, and I don't know whether it's just if you die or whether it's always at the start of his chapters, but where you turn up inside a program and you're talking to I think it's is it Amanda?
Oh, you turn it's like a
kind
nice
of like
clearing
a
and
computer program.
Is it Amanda? She's the old lady with the you go on like a little boat and you can go around.
Yeah.
And she basically gives you your mission.
Yeah. So, but she is a computer program.
Yeah.
You are effectively in the Matrix, because that gets revealed to you, I guess, when you get to that guy's house and you can shoot the robot in the head. He has a little line of dialogue where he says, "I always build a back door into my."
That's right.
programs.
Yeah. He's the creator.
Because later on, if you get to the point where Marcus is leading a peaceful demonstration and he's doing like a big speech,
you've got
Connor
to
stood
run
next to him.
find the back door. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to escape if you don't want to accidentally assassinate him or whatever. But yeah, basically, her conversations I found the most challenging in the game.
Oh yeah.
Because with everyone else, it's kind of like, yeah, spill his drink, kick him in the nuts, or say hello. Yeah, quite obvious. With her, she'd say, "How are things progressing?"
Yeah, and you wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah. It's going all right.
And she'd hate that.
I'm yeah. If you said, "I'm building a bond with him," she'd be like, "Ugh."
Yeah, because she wouldn't want you to. That's the thing. That's what I meant earlier about saying. Sometimes saying the most negative thing gives the most positive response.
Yeah, but which is really counterintuitive, because when you actually figure out what Amanda is and why she's doing things, is because what she actually wants you to do is to go rogue.
Yeah.
She wants you to break your programming so that you can get close to him to assassinate him. So everything they do, the reason that they put you with Hank is because he's unstable and has a lot of emotional content. So they're trying to force you to become emotional.
Yeah.
To try and get attached to him, or to try and get angry with him. Anything to force you to break your program.
And those were some of the bits that I really liked, like where you knew you had to lie, but do I lie as the character or do I lie as me playing the game, knowing what she's thinking? And it was those decisions that I found the most interesting. Where it's like, am I double bluffing this character, or do I go with what I think I'm meant to do? And those decisions I thought were actually really clever. Where you've got to say to her, I don't feel anything. If I die, I get replaced. That's how it should be. And then her opinion goes up. But it's like, that's not what really I think, and that's not what I think Connor thinks either.
No, but isn't it strange though? Like ultimately, it doesn't matter what she thinks of you. There is that actually affects nothing.
Nothing at all.
At any point. It affects her dialogue slightly.
Well, yeah, ultimately, all you get is the dialogue changes and choices down the line.
Yeah, but it doesn't affect how any outcome for Connor whatsoever, whether she likes you or not. Because the real thing is, if you succeed, I think she shows you that there's a new Connor. Or is that if you fail? Because I don't know what you got what did you get when you did the good thing with Hank?
What did I get? I can't remember my very ending now. I think that's my phone again. It's at the very end, isn't it, where you basically becomes their hero, doesn't he? And I think for me, I broke protocol and just went along with it. So I became what Jericho should be.
Oh, of course. So you never go back to...
No, and I never died either, so I never got the...
no. So great. So what happens then if you... So on my playthrough where I kept killing him, eventually you get to a stage where you've spaffed it up so you never found the location of Jericho. So you never even got the chance to, confront him or try to kill him on the boat.
Yeah.
Or you do that and you fail to kill him, but you escape alive. You end up on a rooftop with a sniper rifle.
Okay.
Depending on your playthrough style, Hank might turn up and try and talk you out of it and you get into a fight with him. Or if he's just killed himself, the squad from the very first mission, the lieutenant or the chief there, he turns up again.
I do. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And you can get into a fight with him, so you can actually. I think at that point I don't know if you can actually kill Marcus. You might be able to kill him there, but if you die at that point without resolving your mission, you end up back at her at Amanda. She chastises you for being shit, and then you see another Connor who is like about a foot taller and wider. And then they're like,
Steven
this is the
Seagal
new
of
model.
Connors.
Exactly. He's like, what's this? And they're like, this is the new model. And he's like, what happened to me? And he's like, and she says something along the lines of, well, that's his first mission. And then he just walks towards you. And it kind of fades to black. So it's kind of brutal. So again, that's what I really like, is the contrast of keep all the characters alive, try and get her across the border, try and have a peaceful resolution so that they might have, maybe one day they can be free, etc. Have a good relationship with Hank. The contrast of have Hank fucking shoot himself, have a child and a woman die miserably in one of many scenarios.
That's the way I like it.
And then have everyone really grim and have a big war and have just terror on the streets. So the contrast between those two playthroughs is really good. There is a lot of middle ground stuff that you can either go champ to select or do a third playthrough for to have a look through. But the polar opposites of the game I found work really well. In my opinion, I think maybe you didn't enjoy it as fully because you did kind of half and half.
Oh, I'm by no means saying I didn't enjoy it. I wouldn't have completely if I didn't enjoy it. But
I mean, I think you would have found the story more fulfilling had you had a complete ending of one variation or the other, rather than a slightly broken one where
I quite like my broken ending in a way.
Well, no, but I mean, that's good. But I mean, I think because of some of the content that you've missed, it might push your opinion down slightly further. I think I have a higher opinion just because I've seen all the other possibilities, which together, which is why it works as a game rather than a movie, make up a complete picture for you to say, these are all the possibilities given the choices that we can make in our daily lives and as, powerful people at any level of society. And we really need to think about these things we do. And that was the sort of general message that I got from the game by playing it, at a completionist level, by trying to find everything and do everything and lift everything and wipe everything I could. I got a lot out of it because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, story-wise, it's serviceable, but what I really enjoyed was the characters more than the story. And I think Connor was what did it for me. I really liked him as a character. Like we've mentioned before, I didn't really care about Marcus, and I was really intrigued by Cara and Alex. I think theirs had the most stake in where I was going. Like, I didn't know, like, their kind of, their whole journey, I was like, I don't really see the point in this. Like, how is this going to end up well for the both of them? And I quite liked I quite liked that, okay, shit, they've ended up in a concentration camp. Clearly that wasn't going to work, and I like that they had the balls to be like, yeah, no, you did it wrong. And now you're all going to actually die. So that's what I mean.
I kind of wish I'd have experienced that on my first playthrough to really hammer in.
But as well, I didn't mean to. I was trying to do my. I wanted to get away. I was like, I really don't want this to end badly. And I honestly can't remember how my Connor ending ended. I know we went into the main. I forget what the main complex is now. That runs all the cyborgs. But we went in there. I had to fight myself and killed a few people. So he's not going to end well. But I feel like I did like that it had all the choices that kind of related to you as a person. Where I think for the start of it, you go through the motions, then you're like, actually no, I'm going to try and make my own choices now, and I'm going to go my own different way. I can see why a lot of people didn't like it as a game, and the fact that
it's not incredibly immersive. That's why you don't feel like you're affecting the world that much, that you're really there so much as just watching something.
Well, it's also as well what you class as a game. Because most people, especially with the PlayStation Plus crowd, which is probably one of the only reasons why we played it was that it was free. If you're used to I wanted to play it anyway because I like those kind of games. But if you're the kind of guy, I mean, it was similar to how XCOM 2 was released as one of the downloadable games. That's one of my most favourite games. And a lot of people complain saying, "What is this shit? You have to take turns." It's like, oh God. You've obviously never played chess or anything that was strategic. You just played Call of Duty or one of them, just something that's a mindless bit of fun. It's like you need to be open-minded enough to experience all types of different media and how you can interact with it. And it annoyed me that the backlash it got from from people who have experienced it, they probably shouldn't have. Like, I feel like if they hadn't have made it free, a lot of people wouldn't have played it and give it such a bad rap. It should have. It's a niche game, and it should have maybe not. It should have stayed with its niche audience because obviously it should try and branch out. But all the negative comments I think it gets is because people who shouldn't have experienced it had a go at it, and they were just completely flabbergasted by the lack of what they used to.
Yeah. Is it just XCOM right now?
Well, both really. More so this now because it's like.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing because obviously the was it Beyond Two Souls, Between Two Souls? Beyond was the free game, a couple of months prior to it as well.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, like, if you don't like that kind of game, like obviously Heavy Rain as well, you're not going to enjoy it because all it is a couple of QTEs and it's heavily RPG, isn't it? You have to make decisions. You have to affect what's going on around you. It's basically the visual equivalent of one of those books where you make a decision and turn to whatever page it says.
Oh, I love a fighting fantasy book. Exactly. Oh, I've got them all.
Yeah, but it's better than the equivalent of the what's it ones. Oh God, was it unfortunately the now dissolved Telltale.
Oh, Telltale, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. This is their bag.
Well, yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, the Telltale I can't even say
Telltale.
The Telltale games weren't as well developed as this series of games in terms of. Okay, I'm not going to say anything about how polished it was or anything. I don't think it was a graphical issue, but in terms of the stories weren't very strong because they were just kind of like little.
They
stories.
strive on their moral choice system, similar to this as well.
I mean, again, yeah, they're very similar, but what they never did was have, a big story or a big point. They were always just, well, basically, you're kind of just watching an animated movie and pressing the button every now and again. I got the Batman Telltale free again on the Plus, and literally just don't do anything. Just put the controller down, let it pick the first choice, go out for an hour, come back with a platinum trophy. There is no need for me to play the game. I can literally just sit there and watch it and eat food and play on my phone, and it will just play in the background.
Well, that's it.
There's no desire for me to do it. Whereas with Detroit or one of those other games, I do. I want to find out. I want to know. I want to figure out what's going on.
It's interesting because I was thinking, is there a future in this type of game? Because, I mean, the interactive parts of doing a full circle and press next. There's never any time limit to that in this. Like something like Heavy Rain, there were some time sensitive things, and there's a few fight scenes, but I mean, ultimately, this can be done now through Netflix. And like you take something like Charlie Brooker's Bandersnatch, it's the same concept. It's back there in Night Trap, which started life as a VHS game where I don't know how you played it, you pause it, reset it, or whatever. But I mean, the future of this kind of thing with its budget, I mean, I don't know how much it costs to make, and you've got real actors. The next thing David Cage might do might as well just be an interactive Netflix film. I mean, it can be animated if you want. I mean, pair it with the guys who did Love, Death and Robot and just do this kind of thing through Netflix. Because I think if this was...
That'd be gorgeous.
It would be brilliant. If this was on Netflix, I think people would be raving about it. But because it's a £40 PlayStation 4 game for gamers, because it fits more into the movie genre, and now interactivity is creeping into movies. This fits better over there, and I think it would completely turn the score around to a 9 out of 10 if it was on Netflix rather than a PlayStation game. Because it's, I don't know, I feel like it's even though with the exact same content, the exact same experience, just placing it over there would be completely different, I reckon. And I think that's where it's going to end up going in the future, especially with things like Stavia and... Is it Stavia or Stadia? Stavia sounds like some sort of...
Stadia.
Yeah, Stavia sounds like something you'd get for an infection.
I'm not sure about Stadia. To me, it's just another long line of the Spotify's and just pay to have something that you still don't have.
Well, it's unfortunately the future.
As soon as it ends, you don't have it.
Yeah,
it is. But again, I stand by it. I still prefer physical.
Oh, I do absolutely, and I really like the fact that I don't know. It seems to be going full circle again, where I went to Sainsbury's earlier to look for my Raspberry Pi magazine, and behind me there's a load of vinyls of David Bowie.
Nice.
Albums from whenever. And it's like that's cool. And like, there's kids there. Like I met, it's funny. There's a little lad about 11 years old. He picks up a Stranger Things season 3 soundtrack in vinyl, and says to his dad, "I have to have this." And I thought, well, first I thought you pretentious little shit, but then I thought that's kind of awesome because I think everything goes full circle. They say everything's got what is like a 10-year cycle. Physical media will come back, but I think
no, dude. I mean, we've been in a sort of 80s resurgence for, let's say, the past 5 years at least, where things like that, like your Stranger Things and that, are incredibly in vogue now. And again, it's like retro gaming is at an all-time high.
Well, that's it. And as soon as that media, that digital media comes in, it reintroduces all the things that came with it at the time. So I don't know, like joysticks rather than control pads may come back. I hope they do, because I used to love a joystick or like a rollerball. Arcade machines, you can get mini arcade machines now. All that kind of stuff comes back again. But I feel like this kind of media, it does fit really well into just digital streaming, and the way that it is, that could sink into that kind of what we've already got now. I think it would be placed good. It's a good place to put it, because it doesn't really need the processing power of a console, because all it is films. I mean, the most boring parts of the game are just walking around looking at what you can click on.
Well, technically, it's a more involved point and click.
Well, it's exactly what it is. A point and it's not even a point and click. It's because you don't have an inventory. That's something we didn't even talk about. You don't have an inventory. You don't find items. Well, you do find items to kind of interact with the environment. You just have a percentage of what you unlock with dialogue trees, but there's no real way. That's one. Do you actually have a way to figure out what you've collected in order to narrate further? I don't think you do. Like, it just says dialogue tree unlocked.
Only when you get to the particular dialogue.
Yeah.
What you'll see is one of the trees will have then like a little symbol of unlocking.
That's it, yeah.
And then that's the one you pick, and then that's if you look at the photo of Hank's child, when you get to the bridge sequence, you will see that dialogue tree have an animation of unlocking, and then you can talk about it.
But even that's a bit fourth wall breaking. It's alluding to future dialogue, which you shouldn't really know until the point. But yeah, that kind of thing. Like, how much time do you want to spend to unlock further content?
No. Yeah, I mean, but it's one of those things, because let's say taking that exact scene where you go to find him unconscious on the floor, you have those two examples. You have the gun, where you can choose to say what's with the gun and he'll shout out he's playing Russian roulette, or you can choose to
you just leave it alone, which is what I did.
You leave it alone, and then it will go dialogue unlocked.
Yeah.
Because basically, what it's saying is that this is a relevant thing to, I wouldn't say it's fourth wall breaking essentially, but what it shows is that your character, at least on some level, has realised that this is significant.
Yeah.
So therefore, in the future, whether it be now or whether it be in 10 scenes, it's when you see your opening in conversation, I guess, that you can now bring this.
It's the character as an android learning something he didn't know before. It's a realisation. It's a human emotion. But I feel like it would be nice to have just a little bit more, because you are a cyborg at the end of it. Well, like an android, it would have been nicer to have a little bit of a more, like a cyber inventory of what he's thinking, rather than just, I'm only going to find this out by going to talk to someone and having responses. Just something a little bit extra to make you feel more like the character, rather than you're just doing dialogue points.
Yeah, they did it very occasionally, like when basically only as Connor, really. When you're investigating a crime scene and you can do the whole look at his, look at the wound, look at the fingerprints, yada yada.
Yeah.
And when you get to the interrogation scene, monitor his heartbeat, see what his eyes are doing. Or when you're interrogating those 3 robots, it was obvious because the one on the left just keep bloody looking.
Yeah.
Like so shift.
Well, I think it's the middle one that bolts.
No, it's the one on the far left.
Oh, I think my middle one bolted.
Nah, it's the one on the far. Well, whichever one keeps looking over at you, it's that
keeps
one.
waving like, hello, it's me.
I'm not guilty, I swear to God. But it's those little things, I guess, that can't remember where my original point lay. But
we're kind of discussing like the kind of the small nuances of the game that kind of, you know, that make you feel like you're actually an android rather than just playing through.
Sorry. Yeah. So to be able to, let's say, like scan them or monitor their heartbeat and stuff, that is implemented, you know, very slightly. So I can understand what you mean. Like, it would be better if when you are talking to Amanda, let's say, you can say, you know, oh, she's feeling worried that I'm betraying my programming, so I'll pick the most android answer. Or that would help you out in the dialogue if that was.
Yeah, all your choices are done as what a human can rationally think, rather than what your symbiotic processor would do. So I think it would be a bit more interesting if it had like a completely robot response, like I don't know, does not compute, you know, just maybe like
00111
just getting a fact, you know, that kind of thing.
Just.
Yeah, I think the only time that am I making this up? Like sometimes when you're getting a bit of information, maybe I think the thing on the side of your head will change colour, and maybe the eyes will flicker a little bit. I'm kind of getting something now.
No, the eyes, I don't think so much. They just kind of stare blankly, and then the thing on the side of their head flickers. It's the same for when you're talking to Hank and his opinion of you goes up or down.
It will go red or blue, depending.
You'll notice it. Yeah, you'll notice it.
Yeah.
But again, I think maybe the counterpoint or the counter argument to that would be the idea of the game is to humanise these characters, to cut down on their androidiness as much as possible.
Androgyny.
To humanise them. Yeah, androgyny. Yeah. And also to sort of emphasise that human nature of the fact that even with the best intentions, things cannot go the way they think they are. So when you say a certain thing and you go, oh yeah, well, I'm trying to get on with him and try and make him happy, that this actually perturbs the person. And you would think, oh, well, actually that should make them happy. Whereas when you have to pick the dialogue that says, wow, just fuck him, I'm just going to carry on.
Yeah.
That's what makes her happy. So, but you can never anticipate that. It's one of those things that you can only anticipate that if you understand the character, if you understand how she will react, because you understand, you know, her mindset.
Yeah.
But that can only be gathered through, you know, various playthroughs or trying to understand what she wants or really paying attention to the characters as they arise.
Yeah, I think what I'm kind of trying to allude to is that I think for me, it would have been slightly more interesting to have a character arc that would maybe start you off as being completely robotic and only thinking in binary, and then very slowly developing different opinions based on interacting with human emotions. Like, maybe at the start, your choices were rationale by a logic puzzle, which was, no, we can't do that because of this equation. No, we can't do that because I wasn't instructed to by my master who is this. And then towards the end, it's more like a feeling where maybe I shouldn't do this because of a future consequence. And then eventually your emotions get built in, and that's what makes you become human, because you build in emotion and rationale rather than just, I don't know. It sets off
that's
really.
Kind of what they try and do right.
They
at
do.
the
It
start,
sets off
isn't
so
it?
quick. The arcs are so jarring. Yeah. It's like all of a sudden everyone's human, and it never really. It kind of tries to build up that all these robots were pushed to their limit, and that kind of later on it was you meet the creator, and it was kind of you get the impression that okay, he did it on purpose perhaps, but I feel like
that's why I guess maybe if you'd have taken Connor's from a different aspect, maybe
his was the best paced of his arc, because he had that arc, but the other two I feel didn't at all.
But that's it. But if you take the darker arc for Connor, I guess it gets to a point where, as you the viewer could perceive it, is that he keeps taking these falls, he keeps getting resurrected, he becomes very throwaway as an entity, and even though he's still trying to do his best or what he thinks he's meant to do, it's kind of then thrown in his face right at the end of it. So his maybe awakening or realization at the end of it then is that everything he did was in vain. It's not going to matter to these people. They just treat me like nothing.
Yeah.
And there can be an awakening, towards the end. So depending on how you play it, and then you're trying to stick to your programming, but then you realise you shouldn't towards the end of it. That would have made it better if if your opportunities weren't there. So right at the start of the game, if it just basically forced you to do the horrible, jarring, androidy thing to do, and then later on you became like, you know what, I should probably stop doing these things. That might have made you. I mean, not with Connor, because I think, again, like you say, his arc was kind of perfect.
Yeah.
But with one of the other characters, if they had, like maybe Kara or someone else, potentially if Kara had have stuck it out for a longer time and taken just beatings, and you actually just had to replay her chapter like 2 or 3 times.
Just keep doing the beating.
Just keep like getting to a point where you kind of like black out, and then you wake up in the shop again. And
that's what I thought it was going to be like, with her character,
something like that.
Because you wake up in that shop, I thought it was going to be like a Groundhog Day kind of thing.
Yeah, but it could be like that. I don't know if there is a possible variant where like I say, there is that option at the start.
Maybe all my criticisms are
can come down.
Actual events that I just haven't experienced. That's the thing. Very possibly.
But this is my argument to you. Is I believe that might be the case for a lot. Quite a large part of what you're arguing against. But I do agree with you on quite a few points in terms of the way they approach the story, maybe, or its lack of originality in some aspects.
Yeah. Would you like to know some reviews that I pulled off Amazon?
Oh god!
These are all 1-star reviews that I've managed to pull together, just because they made me laugh.
Got them.
This one from Arthur Morgan, entitled "Dog Shit." Graphics are awesome. Player controls are just awful. Didn't realise this was just a modern day Dragon's Lair. Snapped and binned. So that's Arthur Morgan there. Nathan Jones. I never knew that racism was a bad thing before playing this video game. Thank God someone finally spent 8 hours telling me repeatedly with QuickTime events.
Yeah, I mean, I see his point.
This is one of my favourites from Hero K3. I love Beyonce 2 Souls. Had a hard time getting rings on those fingers though.
That's good.
Origami Killer version 3 says, so unlike the real Detroit, this is something you actually want to experience. And actually, this is my all-time favourite from Rachel Julie. Titled Empty Box. The box arrived empty with no game inside. Aww.
That's the most positive review.
We're sorry, Julie. Rachel Julie.
Rachel Julie. Well, it's too late now, but if you'd have had PlayStation Plus, you'd have got it for free.
Exactly. I love that that's the review of the game, is that my game had no
there.
box. No game inside the box.
I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate because, again, you don't know who these players are. I mean,
Which Arthur Morgan?
Well, I mean, no, yeah. But in terms of what their play style is, because for me, I think you mentioned it earlier when you said something about the market for the games or whatever, like how long can they go on for? To me, I believe that it would be a dwindling market for sure. But my main requirement for games is that I want them to have a strong story. I don't necessarily care too much about, like, actually sometimes the less I have to do, the better, if the story is strong enough to carry me through it.
I've always said that a game has to exceed in one thing to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna pimp this game out again because I absolutely love it. What was it called? Senua. Hellblade.
Hellblade's
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice, yeah.
Because that game is absolutely gorgeous. I'm loving the idea that you can play it in VR. I know it's still a third-person camera lock when you're in VR, so it kind of puts me off a little bit.
Yeah, I saw some videos of that. It looks interesting. Like you're just kind of a ethereal body looking down on what she's doing, almost.
Yeah. Like I need to give it a go because I've got it there. But just playing that as it was with the headset on to get the audio as it should correctly be heard according to the devs or whatever, was fantastic. it was incredibly immersive because of the way that they use that. There is no HUD system or really mini.
I always like that.
An enemy indicator. So your best shot is the voices in your head go behind you, and you go fuck. Turn around, and sure as shit, there is one. My language has been atrocious tonight. I do apologise. I will attribute that to Simmons Scrumpy Jack. It's 6%, 440ml can, available from your private stockist.
I think you just unlocked a platinum trophy. Yes,
yeah.
I don't usually do effing and jeffing on my channel, but I shall put up a disclaimer.
Disclaimer, I would do, and I apologise.
I've dropped a few F-bombs, I think.
Just a bit. I'm not that bothered, but I do apologise if you don't prefer that language.
But no, it's an interesting point that you point out about just being able to experience something from one aspect of a game. Because I think that one of the things that this game doesn't actually need to do is try and put gameplay in. Like, there are perfectly good... I mean, there's a lot of games now, if you look on Steam, where you literally get dialogue and that's it. And some of them are very high, in very high regard, because they're not trying to manifest as something else. And I feel this will alienate people by looking like one thing. Like, you look at the screenshot, all the graphics are awesome, and you can watch... They've done a very clever way of doing the trailers, where it seems like, oh, look at this fucking awesome gameplay experience. And you play it, and it's like, take the bins out. It's like, that's not quite what I thought was going to happen. No, I think it could be a misleading buy for a new player who just looked at it and thought, what an awesome premise and an awesome thing. Robots, definitely guns.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think when it was pitched, I think people started to think it was more of a Deus Ex kind of vibe. I think they were thinking it was going to be more similar to what the Cyberpunk game is going to be.
Yeah.
More of an actual, I'm going to run around and do stuff. But I think, again, it comes down to what the player requirements are for the game. It's much like, I've been looking today, I'm going to be investing in, what's it called? No Man's Sky.
Oh, okay.
Came out to horrendous reviews because it was pretty bad on launch.
Well, they'd done a false promise of what the footage we saw and the spec of what the game was meant to be, and then when it came out, it was like, this is 1/10 of what it was meant to be.
Yeah, but I think if you look at it now, they've sort of patched and released a lot of.
Well, that's a lot of the way it goes. I think because they preempt this now by having early access, but I think that just tried to be full pelt into a full release. And yeah, a lot of games, one game I really like, Wasteland 2 for instance, that came out and I really liked it. It's slightly broken, it wasn't quite balanced with the enemy percentages and how the calculations was done, and then they released for free if you had Wasteland 2 remastered, they called it. Slightly better graphics, all the the calculations and the code fixed. Annoyingly, it didn't cross save. So the 25 hours I'd put into the original Wasteland release didn't cross over, but yeah, they do improve as they go on. So there's always room to enjoy, but I think if you try and push that as your this is our main, this is it, this is the be all end all, you're going to get criticism. But if it's early access, you kind of get the benefit of that, like, what can we build on, what can be better. It's the way you go about it from the initial offset, I think.
Exactly, and the fact is, especially with that kind of thing, the developers or whatever are going to need some kind of return in order to continue to work on the project.
The game's sold, though, as well. I mean, despite panning, it's sold.
Because, the initial FMVs or whatever really showed it to be something spectacular, and then, unfortunately, for me, it's much on a comparison to the base game for Destiny. When you get it, you're completely underwhelmed by what you were sold and the content that you actually receive. You kind of feel cheated. But certainly for No Man's Sky, they've put in a lot of development over the past couple of years, past year or whatever, and to the point where now it has like full VR support, multiplayer, blah blah blah. And they've updated, like, the planets now are incredibly stunning. They're very different. They're not just cut and paste like they were just vast deserts in the first one. They actually all are very different in their ways, have some of them, different life forms that you can interact with and trade with, and yada yada. And it's basically become like a massive Minecraft in terms of what people are building now. And I saw one where they'd actually build a bar. They called it the avocado bar, and it was built on a big avocado shaped mountain, and they had
That's
like
hipster.
very, very hipster space pods or whatever, like for landing, and then basically looked like a big McDonald's. But to me, that's the kind of thing I like, is the creative aspect. I can make a base and do it. And from what I'm seeing now, the reviews are getting a lot better. A lot more positive. It is on sale as far as I'm aware, so I'm tempted to pick it up.
I saw it. I did see it pop up. I think it's one of those things where there's two approaches you can take to having a release of that kind of game. You can either be really small and have a really solid MVP, like something like PUBG, where when that first got released, it got really amazing reviews and it was really good fun because all it was one mechanic in one map and it really refined it. Or you can have something like No Man's Sky, where they have this massive scope and all these ideas, but you couldn't possibly achieve on everything. But you've got that blueprint of what you can build on, and that's what they did. And then it's just building on that promise. But it's the people that can wait it out and kind of realize that it's going to actually take time to do this. They've got the foundation for it, but now we need to build the walls and the roof and stuff. So given time, it'll get better.
I mean, for early access, you can kind of see there has to be a certain amount of give and take until the full build is actually out there. But otherwise, for people that then bought it after, let's say, said version is actually finished, and it's still sort of subpar to people's expectations for quite a high price, you can understand why people get quite aggravated by that. And it, let's say, is quite unfair to have a year elapsed and then it gets better, because it's still going to be a very sour reception to the fact that, well, I've had to wait a year since I bought the game. You could see it as basically an extended early access. So it's a bit of a shitter. But I think the fact is that they've actually stepped up in terms of any other developer would have just washed their hands and walked away from it and said, right, let's just bin this off. It didn't do very well. Whereas what they've done is taken the money from whatever they've had, really invested the time into it. That started to bring a couple more people into it, and they're pushing it to the point where it's actually becoming quite a solid thing now.
I think
so. I'm very tempted by it.
If you stick with something long enough, because I remember when it first came out, and obviously it got panned, and I remember it was kind of like a bit of a sad story because it was a very small development company. And they obviously got pressured into release dates, and they just didn't have enough time or the resource to actually deliver on what their aspiration was. But they really wanted to do it, so with enough time, they've managed to build on it and actually put what they want in. So it's as they expect it. But I think the problem is people that don't realise that, it's a passion project, and maybe they didn't have it off the bat, but now they've not abandoned it. Time will grow, unless it's something like DayZ, which has never evolved in the last 5 years and that's just dreadful. But it's all down to public perception of what that development cycle is.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's the same for any game really, at any point. And I think it's an unfortunate thing that. Maybe it's a generational thing or a cultural thing where people expect everything to be. I mean, to a certain degree, you should expect a well-rounded product when you get it. But to know the nature of games now, to know that the demand of them is now, quick. So they do what they can. They give it to you as soon as you can, and then because it's a little bit broken, people just throw their dummies out the pram immediately. And despite the developers' best attempts to fix it, even when they've sorted it, there will still be a major outcry about how bad it was on release. So it's unfortunately now it's one of those things with games having to be so big, so complex, and then meet the demand of we need to get it out by Christmas. That's our deadline.
Yeah.
Whether the game's ready or not, we've got to get it in a slightly playable state. And unfortunately, it's that demand that drives a unfinished project. so it's unfortunate then that the gaming community then gets, up in arms about how annoyed they are that it's not perfect, when unfortunately it's just a little bit of patience. It's a little bit of they're gonna have to fix it. They have to fix it. And there's usually you get the game and then there's a massive whacking patch that follows it. Yeah,
you can't buy a game now without having to download the whole thing as a patch.
It's one of those things. Unfortunately, it's the requirements of the studio, it's the requirements of the public to get it out on time, to get it where it needs to be to sell, that unfortunately drives something like that. That's why I tend to like the indie game a little bit better in terms of it presents what it wants to on its own schedule and shows you something that's pretty gorgeous but lacks content. That's the only thing.
This is the point that I was going to bring up, because I think it's a bit of a generational thing for people to complain about games that aren't finished. Because when we were younger, a game was, you can jump. That's all you could do. You can jump on stuff. That's it. And you run to the right, you jump on stuff. And now you've got to have full 3D. You've got to be in an RPG system. You've got to be able to level up. You've got to be able to have microtransactions, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, the one mechanic is fine, and all the indie stuff, a lot of it harks back to the old 8-bit, 16-bit days where you just had one little mechanic and they just really expand on that, whereas everything now just has to tick all these boxes, and if it doesn't, then somehow it's bad. And I don't think that's right. And I think for a game like No Man's Sky, which, maybe it came out and didn't have everything it promised, I feel like I can appreciate it more for, you can fly around, you can go to different planets. That's fine for me. Never had, when I grew up, the most you could do was bounce on a metal hedgehog or whatever it was in Sonic, a metal bug. It just leave some things up to imagination as well. And I don't know, it seems more now like everything has to be there on screen for it to be worthy, rather than...
I think it's one of those things. It's unfortunate. It's like you can compare modern games to modern films in a way that they're using, so much CGI and they're using so much stuff to sell it as realistic and stuff that it immediately comes off as unrealistic, because you can tell for a goddamn start.
Oh yeah, but one tenth of realism will always outweigh 10 tenths of CGI.
Yeah, but that's where they all fall down, unfortunately, because you could play something static like Rayman, or like I'm going to go back Rayman. To Mickey Mouse's Castle of Illusion.
Oh yes,
you can play a goddamn platformer, but even though it's just pixely or basic as hell, the competitive nature for you to get through it, to master the obstacle, to do the thing, the game is inherently good, regardless of its quality visually. And unfortunately, that's the shift in both movie and gaming at the moment, is that they're too focused on making things look nice and developing the technologies to fool your mind and make show you gorgeous things.
They're very much games designed by committee, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So they're neglecting the story, which ultimately is the thing that makes something good. You have to have a good premise. You have to have something to drive the player, to make the player actually care about their character or where they're going.
It has to be one or the other. You have to be really involved in one thing, or you don't give a shit about it to be spectacular. I think, because you look
that's where arcade comes into it.
Exactly. Like you look at something like Streets of Rage 2, which is my favourite game ever. It doesn't matter about the story. You're going to beat up everyone on the way.
But that's it.
The game concentrates on those beating up mechanics and nothing else. It doesn't care about anything else. And everything tries to be all of these parts that a game can be now. And it never achieves in any of them. And they just fall flat. It's like...
But that's where I feel that this genre, let's say, of the story-based games falls into its own category. So I would say the main three things that you can have would be the arcade version, where it's all bouncing Asian tits and polished.
What game's this?
Seats. Well, it'd be like you Dead or Alive or your Street Fighter or something like that. It's all based on let's make it look crazy awesome and just have a bit of fun with it. or you get your games where it's got to be about multiplayer, it's got to be about online, and that's everything. That's your PUBGs, your Call of Duties, all of that sort of horseshit. Where it's got to fit a certain aesthetic, it's got to look good, it's got to look like it belongs on the
where
PS4.
the money is, basically.
Yeah, not
those ones.
It's got, whatever they call them, like the AAAs or whatever. It's got to look like it's made for the current console and not an old gen. And then you've got the other ones like these Beyond Two Souls and stuff, where all they are is content, all they are is exposition, and I think that is going to be the most dwindling of them. Unfortunately, I think it is now getting phased out. It will become phased out because, unfortunately, a lot of games can still have a good content. I think things like Horizon Zero Dawn and stuff. It was a good blend of having that FPS kind of nature with a pretty legitimate kind of story going on in the background, like your Tomb Raiders or whatever. They're an all right blend, but they again are kind of falling to the wayside for things that are going a little bit more MMO in their natures. So you're getting more vast maps, more big, massive multi-online player and PvP and stuff, and it's sort of veering away from concentrated stories and solo player experiences,
well,
which kind of disturbs me a bit.
It's a funny one because this kind of genre. It's very catered for a certain type of player, and back in the kind of olden days, especially with PC gaming. PC gamers kind of adapted to most different genres. So things like Dungeons and Dragons games, like the old Baldur's Gate, your Icewind Dale, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
they were a certain section of people, and it kind of seems like a gaming is kind of adopted into more of it's kind of like a lifestyle now. So then you've got your big, like you mentioned before, your big AAA blockbuster games. But I feel like that's separate from people. That's separate from a group of gamers who will experience, games that are made to be not made to be sold, but made to be a game, like someone's idea. It's interesting because there's a game called Pillars of Eternity, which I really love, and that's an old school throwback to the old Baldur's Gate games, and that started its life in Kickstarter because that kind of genre of game just isn't made anymore. It's made by BioWare, and they broke their budget in a day, I think, and then it skyrocketed to like 8 times what they needed because that user base is they're just waiting for this kind of game, and I think all those players they are there, but we just don't get given this kind of stuff that often. I think we need to get given it more so it can expand more. But I feel like it just reaches an audience that's already established, and we acknowledge it and go, "This is brilliant, more of this." But I don't ever feel like it reaches that Call of Duty, Battlefield, Minecraft, Fortnite, popular streaming bollocks, load of old shit, not real gaming audience that it needs to.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can say what you want. I mean, it's things like World of Warcraft. It's weird for me. I haven't really played it. Because for me, it seems that the inference is all about basically what do you look like? Let's make some crazy far off characters in a bit of a cuddly kind of environment. Whereas I prefer, like you say, like Neverwinter or Baldur's Gate. And I'm just trying to get into what did I say I was playing earlier? Guild Wars. Because obviously that's fantastic. That meets my criteria. It's completely free to play the base game and all the areas of the base game. You don't need to ever... so I get to just play it and go, do I like this? Which was great about Neverwinter, because that was also free, or may still be free to play on PS4.
I believe it
is. I got heavy into Neverwinter as well. And I really enjoy things like, Path of Exile, Torchlight, the top-down dungeon crawlers and stuff. So it meets a nice criteria where it's like, it kind of feels like that. But you get a little bit more of the lore, which can be geeky to some, but I really enjoy because, I like the strong story elements. I'm a bit of a completionist. I like to know all the elements. So that sort of stuff can draw in well for me. Whereas I do feel like what you're saying, like the populist elements of, like, let's say, World of Warcraft and Call of Duty, I believe are more popular just because they're popular. It's not that they're a very good standout game in any huge way, or that they're massively different to anything else. It's just that they're, what everyone gets.
It's weird because games used to be seen as like a thing that was shameful. Like you play games. Oh no, I don't play games. It's now it's trendy, and now it's the Nike trainers of entertainment.
Yeah,
it used to be that only geeks play games, and they play there was a sort of allegiance here amongst people that played them, and we always backed what we liked. But now it's kind of we've got this horrible kind of menagerie of people who, I guess it's going to seem really ranty, but these games which are designed by people who don't know how to make games, they're just designed by what they look at the stats of what's popular in the past, and they try and manipulate, recreate that in order to sell, and it's a bit. It doesn't seem genuine.
Look at what has happened to the Assassin's Creed franchise. It's completely veered away from its original intentions and any feasible, run through storyline. And now has become something that is just, what's it called? Mini transactions and sort of pay to win kind of mentality, where you have to just keep. It's like upgrade by numbers and all this kind of crap. It's basically become influenced by the mobile gaming industry, which I think is kind of appalling in a way. That what used to be you just buy the game. You just get it.
Yeah.
And then that developed into DLC, which I was very resistant to. Because I was like, well, if it's content you wanted to put in the game for me originally, you should give it to me for free. Because I've bought the bloody game.
There,
but then exactly.
Yeah. The worst thing in the world is when you've got... you can pre-order DLC. Yeah. No. You've got to put it on a disc.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
I understand it's not finished, but there's no reason you can't, give me the upload of it or whatever. And it's things like, again, franchises that can continue to annoy me with like the Bungie thing and Destiny. As much as I rage against it, I love the game because it combines, the lore is there if you scrap around for it. The missions themselves don't really offer too much in the way of entertainment, but the game mechanics are enough for me to enjoy it. And it is kind of one of those, it's a midpoint MMO for people who don't really play MMOs.
It tricks you into not thinking you're playing an MMO, and really you are.
Exactly, but you totally are, because you're just doing all the public events and all that,
Destiny
all the grinding. Yeah,
Destiny 2 has gotten really good, and it's very... It caters to that want of delivery, of the recognition that you're doing well in the game. And it does it really well. It's very subtle. It's a simple. It's a sound effect of receiving an item, doing a level up, or just every now and again it just hits you with something which is like a little endorphin of you're doing well. It's a little recognition. That's what you want from that kind of game. It's a progressional stamp like there you go, new milestone, carry on, keep going, and that's exactly what you want from that game. It's very well realised.
No, and to a certain degree they do. Sort of make things incredibly rewarding for you without the need too much to you can do the whole just obviously I would say never buy the base game, you buy Forsaken at the very least, to get a decent game out of it, because again that was another one where they released a base game that wasn't too great. The second two add-ons didn't particularly enhance it, and it wasn't until Forsaken dropped that it felt like a complete game.
Yeah, I played it release day, and it was like, I've played it for 6 hours, and now everyone who's playing this is the same because there's no content. So I didn't play it for about a year, and then after that I was like, okay, now I can finally play catch up, it's fine.
Yeah, but then the fact is that they charge you for each subsequent one, and then you can even buy an annual pass, which they say will give you content.
I'm annoyed about the annual pass, but I will give it an annual pass, but I won't pay for it.
No, because the point is, if you buy the annual pass, in my mind, you should get any DLC and any upcoming DLC for free. Whereas the fact is, you don't, and then Shadowkeep is going to be again, like 50 quid when it drops. So, it's something I'm going to be incredibly resistant to. Because
when I first pre-ordered Destiny 2, I pre-ordered it with Season Pass. And then that changed to only be expansion pack 1 and 2. And I was like, no, season pass means everything.
Well, but that's how they get round it, isn't it? They say no, season pass is different from annual pass.
Oh, I suppose only this season.
Yeah. So season pass is just like you get to play some limited time events within the game, but annual pass did entitle you to the 2 DLCs which dropped within the year or 2 after it.
Sneaky buggers.
Yeah, exactly. So you had to know which one you were getting, and that's the way they got me with Forsaken, is that they said, okay, we're going to give you that and the season pass, and I was like, oh, cool. So I'll get Black Armory and whatever else dropped when I got it, and it was like, no, you just get the Halloween event. And I was like, okay, cool. So unfortunately, it's one of those things. Like, I'm incredibly resistant to drop another chunk of change on a game that is now like I swear to God, like a 90 gig install, because of all these bloody updates.
Yeah, it's a hefty old one.
It's one of those, and I really would like to play Shadowkeep, but I'm gonna wait a long time until that comes down, because it's one of those, like, I feel like you get cheated out of quite a lot with the Destiny, in terms of, yes, you get a lot of good in-game rewards when you get these expansions, but it's a lot of, you haven't added that much content. Yes, you've added, the new area or whatever, which will mean a new public event, but you haven't, there's no story, there's no development into.
Yeah, if you critical path the actual expansion pack stories, you can do them all in a day.
Yeah,
and that's done.
It takes absolutely no time whatsoever.
Yeah.
So again, for my money, Shadowkeep best had be a massive chunk of some. Let's go into the the universe. Let's explain some stuff.
It's fairly expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd hope it's got some content in it. The only reason I'm thinking about buying it is because it's very close to my birthday, and I'm thinking, well, I will splurge on something that I know is overpriced and ridiculous because it's near my birth time.
Yeah.
But even then, I'm like, I'm going to get a new plasma gun. It's fine.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. For the content, basically, yes, you will just unlock a couple of things. But what annoys me about that isn't so much that it's all the money in the yada. It's the fact that if I a player who hasn't got that much money to keep chucking away on games and stuff, gets to a point where now if I go into public activities or PvP activities, and now all these Guardians that have bought the new expansion, the new thing, have got all the new exotics, new weapons that are just absolutely blitzing me because they're crazy 2.0 armor and la la la, then that becomes a disadvantage to players who are just trying to play the goddamn game. That can feel a bit outweighed to me. I'm sure at some point, I'm sure someone said that even sometimes, I know it's not true for the Black Armory stuff, but when a new thing launches, you will still get maybe 1 or 2 of the exotics. They won't be completely tied to owning it. You will just get a new exotic quest arrive because of the arrival of the thing. So you might still get 1 of the 2 core ones, but you won't get a lot from the big pool, if that makes sense. So
I see what you mean. Yeah.
You'll get 1 exotic quest.
You're not
for
left
1
out.
item, but yeah, you're not completely left out, which is, well, I'm like, okay, I can kind of stick with it a bit. But in terms of at the minute, I'm missing out on, there's the chalice thing, the menagerie of thing. I can't do that because I haven't got the annual pass. I can't do the Black Armory thing because I haven't got it. And then now I'm going to have to buy a whole new DLC to keep current and get up to the newest. Because again, if you've got that now, I think the current one is 900 light level or 850 or 900 light, whereas the current cap for me is 750. So if I'm now pitted against someone else, again, unless it's level scaled or whatever, it's going to be a disadvantage to me in an area where I'm trying to get kills or.
Well, they do it to make you pay, basically. So
of course, but that's what's annoying about the pay to play mentality, is the fact that if it was purely cosmetic, I can get behind it because I can go, yeah, fine. I don't need to look like a badass and ride a killer whale around or whatever. Well, that's World of Warcraft, isn't it? Is spend money and get to have like a sick I don't know what you have, T-Rex or
That's
whatever.
every MMO. You want a good amount, you got to pay.
Yeah, of
for
course.
those.
That's every MMO. But that's the equivalent in Destiny, is the fact that, your guns are the things that you need to pay to play for. You can unlock all your sparrows and all your other crap that makes no difference, but what you need to pay for isn't necessarily the content, because it's crap usually. It's the guns. That's all it is that you need the weapons, you need the new level cap. And that's predominantly all it is, if you want to keep playing with it. Because, weirdly, there is nothing really new about the game unless you get the roving events like, the Iron Banners or yada yada, and then the seasonal things. There's not much to keep you coming back to it unless they say there's a new exotic or there's a new weapon, and then people get on it for a bit. And that's basically it. Or people just doing raids and whatever.
You fall into routine with that game, I think. That's
Again, we've talked about Destiny for way too long now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Christ.